So as we go through Sunday, showers continuing, but actually becoming more widespread as we go through into the afternoon. Heavy at times, containing the odd rumble of thunder too. Across Scotland, dry here with some sunnier spells and lighter winds for many of us as well. So that will help with the temperatures, giving a slightly warmer feel where you do catch any sunshine. And across parts of Scotland, temperatures recovering up around to 15 degrees. Sunday evening then we'll start to see showers fading away, turning drier with some late evening sunshine. But another area of low pressure is coming in towards the southwest. So as we go into Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday generally unsettled, but temperatures may be recovering just slightly.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far and it could be yours. Phil was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox. I just looked at my account and thought, oh my God, yeah, it's true, it's gone into my account. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Why would I do that? Hello and welcome to GB News Saturday. I'm Dawn Neeson with the next 3 hours, keeping you company on your telly, online and on digital radio. Keeping you up to date on the stories that really matter to you and, of course, all the football, because it's football. Coming up this hour, she says very seriously, the work starts for Keir for the new Prime Minister. Sir Keir Starmer takes the keys to number 10, although there aren't any keys, by the way. I'll tell you more about that later, in a landslide victory as the new leader appoints his government with the NHS, immigration and housing top of that agenda. We'll bring you the latest on that. Then, don't reform. Boris Johnson, yes, he's still around, blames the Pied Piper Nigel Farage for role in destruction of the Tories as he warns the Tories to avoid merging with reform. as he offers advice on how to fix the party. Is he right, though? And away from the election, it's coming home. I'm not singing, don't hate you that much. England must improve if they are to win the first European Championship, and things are starting to get serious in the quarterfinals. And the question everyone wants to know is it coming home? But this show is nothing without you and your views, especially this weekend, and I hope you're having a fantastic one. So let me know your thoughts on all the stories we're discussing, the chances of England, by visiting gbnews.com/and your say and join the conversation. Or message me on our socials, we're at GB News. But first, it's those news headlines with the very, very gorgeous Ray Addison.
Good afternoon. 1 minute past 12, our top stories this hour. So Keir Starmer has opened his first cabinet meeting by telling ministers we have a huge amount of work to do. The new Prime Minister was applauded by his colleagues as they began the business of governing the country. Labour is expected to focus on its manifesto pledges, including delivering economic stability and cutting NHS waiting times. So Keir will also need to prepare for a NATO summit next week in Washington, D.C., where discussions will include support for Ukraine. Well, French migrants are reportedly vowing to cross the Channel at the first chance they get following Labour's election victory. According to The Telegraph, most migrants in a camp near Dunkirk said they were, quote, overjoyed when they were told that Rishi Sunak was no longer the Prime Minister. They also said they would risk crossing the Channel in small boats as soon as the weather allowed them to. So Keir Starmer has previously promised to scrap the Rwanda deportation flights on day one if Labour reached power. Former Home Secretary Suella Braverman says the deterrent is now gone.
Hundreds of excellent Tory MPs have been kicked out of office. We're now seeing Keir Starmer install his government, scrap the Rwanda plan, for example. Years of hard work, acts of parliament, millions of pounds been spent on a scheme which, had it been delivered properly, would have worked. But, there are big problems on the horizon, which will be, I'm afraid, caused by Keir Starmer. It's up to the Conservative Party to see how we respond to that.
OK, let's go straight now live to Downing Street, where our political editor Christopher Hope is with us.
Hello, yeah, I'm here in Downing Street. The cabinet meeting is just breaking up. Ed Miliband just left, and on the way in, he had some words to say to GB News viewers about his plans for GB Energy. Let's hear what he had to say. OK, and then that was what he had to say then. And then we had Louise Haigh. She came and spoke to us also about her plans for reforming the National Rail Service. I asked her whether she felt that how soon you could privatise the National Rail Service, and she said as soon as possible. So we are here in Downing Street. It's pouring with rain. Never stops raining, it seems, in Downing Street. And the cabinet is just breaking up here. So Keir Starmer's first cabinet. They've been meeting since 11 a.m. There should be some footage circulating from that meeting shortly. But the meeting is breaking up as I speak. We're expecting a press conference from Sir Keir Starmer around 1 o'clock in 10 Downing Street, when we should probably hear more about the day one plans for this government, notably axing the Rwanda plan, the plan to deal with the illegal migrant problem. That will save probably £100 million that would have been spent in 2025, 2026 if the Tories had held power in yesterday's election. Looking over my shoulder here, here's Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary. Morning, both. How was your meeting, Bridget Phillipson? Very good. That's Bridget Phillipson and Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary and the Education Secretary. Shabana Mahmood will have some questions to answer about remarks made by James Timpson, who's her new prisons minister, Lord Timpson now, of course. He said in his opinion only a third of prisoners should be in jail, the rest shouldn't be in prison. So I think that'll be a political issue, I think, for her to address at some point over this weekend. Looking at my shoulder, no one else is yet emerging, so we are expecting the cabinet to lead this first meeting. Of course, the reason why Sir Keir Starmer is having it today is because they'll be sworn into the Privy Council tomorrow by the King. And at that point, they can receive state secrets and privileged briefings that we won't get as members of the press. And then Tuesday, we'll see the Prime Minister leave for the NATO summit, a key meeting for him. He'll meet world leaders and just discuss defence policy and the UK's commitment to maybe spending 2.5% of GDP on defence. That, of course, is a commitment made by the Tory party when they were in government, but this government has not made that commitment yet. They want to get there at some point, so that'll be the big issue for next week. MPs will be sworn next week as MPs after the Speaker, probably Sir Lindsay Hoyle, is elected by MPs on Monday or Tuesday. And the following week we have the King's speech when the plans for government in the state opening of Parliament is set out. And the first chance we'll get to see Sir Keir Starmer at Prime Minister's questions, PMQs, will be on the 24th of July, the following Wednesday. Looking at my shoulder, no one emerging just yet, so it's a busy time here in Downing Street.
Hello, Mr. Hope, it's Dawn Neeson here. Firstly, Christopher.
Hello, Dawn.
Hello. How are you doing? You must be absolutely exhausted, as I believe the King asked our new Prime Minister.
Yes, it's a long 21 hours non-stop, lived off bananas and cups of tea in the small hours of yesterday, and then coffee when I woke up. But yeah, it's all part of bringing the GB News viewers the best political coverage possibly. Yeah, but it's tiring, but no more tiring than for the new government. They are having no break. I mean, they've been campaigning round the clock, these Labour candidates and the team around them. And unlike the Tory party, who got their feet up this weekend, licking their wounds, I should say, because of course they lost power, this government is straight into it. And I think that pace of government is never really forgotten. It's quite interesting seeing all the cabinet arrive earlier with their new red folders, looking like they're the new boys and girls at school. Looking a bit over my shoulder. Morning, sir. What are your plans for Attorney General? That is the new Attorney General who has replaced Emily Thornberry, who surprisingly was not given that role in the Shadow Cabinet. We don't know why yet, because of course that was one of the controversial moments of the new cabinet being appointed, was why wasn't Emily Thornberry given that job? We still don't know yet, and that might be the question we can ask Sir Keir Starmer at the press conference in an hour's time in 10 Downing Street.
That would be very interesting.
As I was saying, I mean, yeah, that's right, Dawn. And there was a feeling of new boys and girls at school. For 14 years, these MPs, candidates as they were, have been looking at this door of 10 Downing Street, wondering what it's like to go through it and have people like me shout annoying questions at them. Well, now they're feeling it, and they're quite enjoying it. Jonathan Reynolds, the business secretary, looked quite jolly and grinning away and dawdled on his way in. Ed Miliband had a few words to say to GB News earlier. Here's Ian Murray, the Scottish Secretary. Ian Murray, how safe is the Union under Labour? Very safe there. That was Ian Murray, who's the Scottish Secretary. How safe is the Union, I said, under Labour? He said very. Not least because the SNP have lost loads of MPs in the general election on Thursday. But there's a feeling here, and here we have some more. Here's Steve Reid, who's the Environment Secretary. How was the first cabinet meeting, Steve Reid? And Baroness Smith, Angela Smith, who's the Labour leader of the House of Lords, both leaving there under a shared umbrella, a much smaller than my GB News umbrella, I should say.
Chris, they all look very perky, it has to be said. I know that it's the first day at school and it must be very, very exciting for them, but they do all look very perky.
Well, I think they're quite excited. I do liken it, I'm afraid, to be, and I don't want to be sort of childish about it, but the first day at school, everything's new, everything's fresh, something you might have been looking forward to for a while. They've got their folders. We saw they look at their folders, and on there is the cipher of the King. This is the job which many of them have wanted for so long and looked so far away from them when Jeremy Corbyn was leader and the party looked almost unelectable as a government. Well, that's all changed under Keir Starmer. For better or for worse, we have a Labour government, and I mean that's what the country wants. 170 majority can't be argued at. So Keir Starmer said just behind me on that podium, didn't he, how he wants to govern for the whole country and particularly for those who didn't vote Labour. So how they will wield that power, we'll wait and see. Just leaving now is Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary. Wes Streeting, how was your meeting?
Very good. We're getting to work straight away.
Jonathan Reynolds there, the Business Secretary, saying superb. And we heard there from Wes Streeting, of course, the Health Secretary, saying we're getting to work straight away. He, of course, said overnight that the NHS is now broken, isn't fit for purpose, and reminded me very much of John Reid, the new Home Secretary back in the day in about the mid-noughties, mid-2000s. He came into the Home Office and said it wasn't fit for purpose. That's the first time I've heard similar language from a government minister. He says the NHS is broken and he's going to fix it. And he's telling GB News just then, leaving Cabinet, he's going to get to work straight away. I do think politically only really the Labour Party has the political space to reform the NHS. I think it's an area that the Tory Party was always on the defence about. It wasn't trusted by the workforce to get it right. I think Wes Streeting does have the political freedom, I think, to reform the NHS and get it working. His first issue in the in-tray is junior doctors. They've been striking for the past year. They want a 35% increase in pay, Dawn, 35% increase in pay. He thinks he can get that sorted, but of course there's no money to pay for it. So how will he do that is the first big challenge he's facing.
They have accepted, I think in Wales they accepted less than 35%, didn't they? So, there is a potential for negotiation there.
Other doctors have accepted less than that. The junior doctors are holding out for 35%. It's such a large figure because they believe they've been underpaid for so long by the Tory government when they're in charge. Angela Smith, Baroness Smith, what have you forgotten? She's not telling GB News what she's forgotten there, but that's Angela Smith, Baroness Smith. Here is Louise Haigh, the Channel Secretary. Louise Haigh, how's the meeting?
Not right now, Chris.
Louise Haigh there saying, not right now, Chris. So obviously there's some kind of secret they've discussed at Cabinet they won't tell us, but there we are.
It's playing hard to get.
Louise Haigh, of course, is the Transport Secretary. Somewhat, yeah, she's a Transport Secretary. On the way into the meeting, I said, when will you start nationalising the railways? And she said, as soon as possible. Now, what that means is that the Labour government's plan is that as soon as these franchises end, these rail franchises end, and the state, the government will take over the running of the railways. So after maybe 5 years maybe, we'll see the entire rail network in England certainly owned by the state and run by the state, and that's her plan in government. It's Louise Haigh, she's the Transport Secretary.
Chris, how you've got your ear close to the ground over there. How happy are the Labour faithful with the selection of this cabinet?
That's very hard to say. I think they are happy because essentially it's the same shadow cabinet as existed. The only differences are the MPs who didn't make it back. Thangam Debonair lost out to the Greens in Bristol. Forgive me, look at my shoulder. Once again, Baroness Smith, how's the meeting?
It's great to be there.
Great to be there. That's Baroness Smith. She's the Labour leader of the House, the government leader of the House of Lords. The shadow cabinet, yeah, it's basically the same people being appointed. Thangam Debonair didn't make it back, beaten by the Greens in Bristol. And of course, Jonathan Ashworth in Leicester, he lost his seat. The surprising move is, as I say, Emily Thornberry, the Shadow Attorney General, not given that role in government. We don't know what the problem is or why she hasn't got it. Instead, a barrister who wasn't in the government was given that role by Sir Keir Starmer and made a peer in the House of Lords. It may be that as a senior lawyer, maybe, Dawn, that he feels that he wants to have someone who he knows from his private practice, who he trusts, because that role of Attorney General is mainly dealing with senior, big, important legal issues, 80% of which we don't know what they are. Liz Kendall, there's Liz Kendall, the Welfare Secretary. Liz Kendall, how was the Cabinet meeting? That was a nod at the GB News viewers there, looking firm. A big challenge for Liz Kendall, of course, is how to control the welfare budget. I couldn't see you got into the car then. Is someone got in the car? I missed that.
I think it was Yvette Cooper,
the Home Secretary, getting into the car there. Yeah, it may well have been. Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, of course, a big challenge. She's got one of the biggest pressing issues in this Labour government's in-tray, which is the small boats crisis. Now, Labour's plan is to drop the Rwanda plan on day one. So far, £270 million of our taxpayers' money spent on creating a place to receive the Rwanda people in Rwanda, small boat arrivals in Rwanda. They will save £100 million over 2 years by axing that plan. But what will she replace it with? Her plan is a border command, so better coordination with the security services, MI6, MI5, the police, the border force, and better cooperation with enforcement authorities on the continent. So Keir Starmer is convening a summit at Blenheim Palace of 44 European leaders. That's on the 18th of July, and he'll use that as a small boat summit to get cross-government, cross-Europe, in fact, cooperation to deal with the small boats crisis and arrivals by small boats. That's his idea. But we'll wait and see if it works out. But there was pressure from day one on Yvette Cooper. She'll know a lot of things we don't know about, all the plots, the issues, the arrest warrants required, all that stuff that goes on below the line. She is now getting briefings. Her job is highly pressured immediately. But on the surface, of course, the issue of small boats, the illegal arrivals on the south coast of our country has not gone away and will keep going. And that is now her problem. They can't really keep saying that 50,000 small boats, people in small boats arrived on Rishi Sunak's watch. We know that's the case, but frankly, who cares anymore? Labour's in charge, and what will they do?
This is the problem now, isn't it, Chris? It's very easy when you're in opposition to say, we'd do this better, we'd do this better, you've been rubbish for the last 14 years. But now, as Keir himself said, it's all about it's your action, not your words. And, you know, to be fair to Yvette, she has got her work cut out. But, you know, they keep repeating, we're going to smash the gangs, smash the criminal gangs, without explaining how they're going to do it, considering most of the gangs are based in Turkey, for a start.
And it wasn't for want of asking them, Dawn. We're always asking Sir Keir Starmer and Yvette Cooper, what will you do differently that the Tory government hasn't done? And the answer was, well, I mean, the border command and better cooperation, but the Tory government did tell us all the time that's what we're doing and it's not working. There was early evidence that the Rwanda plan, without even a flight taking off, was working to a degree. We saw migrants moving to Dublin across the border from Northern Ireland to avoid being taken to Rwanda. We had interviews in a newspaper, The Telegraph, notably spoke to migrants waiting in camps in the north coast of France. They're saying they were waiting to come across until the Labour government comes in. And that was used in the final days of the election campaign by Rishi Sunak to be a way to criticise Labour's plans. I think Labour hasn't really got a strong answer yet on the small boats crisis. We wait and see whether the idea of working more closely with foreign countries, foreign partners, will work. That's certainly the idea that Keir Starmer is pushing, but they've got to tackle it. It wasn't their problem then, it certainly is now.
Well, this is why, probably, that one of the first things Keir Starmer did on Friday night, when obviously he doesn't work, so he's already lying to us, by the way, was to phone President Macron in France, wasn't it? I think that was one of the first phone calls he made.
Yeah. And he spoke to, I think, Canadian President Trudeau, Donald Tusk, who's the Polish PM, he phoned up, and of course we spoke to the French President Macron. I think it's slightly unfair, if I may say so, Dawn, the idea of not working after 6 o'clock. He said that because he likes to spend time with his family. No, but he observes the Jewish rituals of the Sabbath with his wife Victoria on a Friday night, and he spends time with his family. I mean, I did ask him on Tuesday, just for you, Dawn, how are you spending this Friday night? And he said he's working. But the idea was he's trying to carve out family time when he can. And it's no worse than David Cameron. When David Cameron was Prime Minister, he would regularly pop upstairs to see his children and was never criticised. John Healey, will you spend 2.5 billion% on defence? No answer. And that was John Healey, the Defence Secretary. The question I was trying to get out of my mouth and failed slightly was, will you spend 2.5% of GDP on defence? He's going to the NATO summit on Tuesday, of course, with Sir Keir Starmer, and I'll be on a flight with him for GB News all the way to Washington. The big question he's got all the time is, when will you commit to spending 2.5% of GDP, our gross turnover, on defence? I slightly messed up the question, but that was the point. He knew what I was asking him.
Well, I mean, the Tories were committed, weren't they? They did make a promise, whereas with Labour, it's like it's an ambition, it's a plan, but we can't say definitely when it'll happen.
That's right.
That happens a lot.
That's exactly right, Dawn. Exactly right. The Tories had committed to spending 2.5% of GDP by the end of the decade. I think 2029 was the date they gave us in their manifesto to hit 2.5% of spending on defence of GDP. The Labour Party, the Labour government said when they were campaigning that they hope to get there at some point, and they're not sure when. I think that pressure will start on day 4 or 5 of this government on those flights to America, when we get a chance to ask Sir Keir Starmer and John Healey about defence, and it will accelerate when they get there, when he meets with Joe Biden and other senior world leaders.
Chris, just finally, very quickly, I know we're running out of time. At what time is this press conference meant to be happening with Keir Starmer?
1 p.m. We're expecting that to be 1 p.m. So that'll be in 10 Downing Street. Do tune in. I'll be trying to ask a question for GB News viewers. What should I ask him, Dawn? What's your question?
I want to ask how he feels about the fact that sort of like around about 31% of the country voted for him. So, I mean, sort of like that means an awful lot of us didn't. How does he feel about that? It's not really a vote of confidence, is it?
Great question. I'll do my best.
Mr. Hope, thank you very much for joining us. And go and get a cup of tea and get dry. Blimey. Chris has been hanging around 10 Downing Street in the rain, and God, it's raining, hasn't it? Non-stop for us, so thank you very much there, Christopher Hope. Now, let's see what my panel make of this. It's now I'm joined by the acting editor of Conservative Home, Henry Hill, and former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn, James Schneider. Thank you very much for joining me, gentlemen. Exciting about the football?
I am.
Good, excellent, right. That quick word, right, OK, fine. What do you make of what we've just been seeing at Downing Street this morning?
Well, I think the government's priorities, at least as they're being presented by Chris Hope, seem quite at odds with how people were voting in the general election. I mean, people are calling this a loveless landslide, and I think that's a good term for it. But it's not just a lack of love for the incoming Labour government. There's also, for there to be a loveless landslide, there has to be real hatred for the government that has passed. So those priorities can't be the priorities that people wanted, i.e. those of the Conservative Party. And those that Labour were putting forward, i.e. not very much, can't be the priorities that people want. And if you look at the polling, NHS and living standards were overwhelmingly the biggest issues. And Labour won huge numbers of seats because the Tories self-combusted and fell apart.
It was a vote against the Tories.
It was a vote against the Tories, and in many places where there was the possibility to vote for an alternative to Labour with no threat whatsoever of the Tories getting in, which lots of people were worried about, people took that chance.
It's like, as England described it, and even Emma Redcar knew at Wimbledon, it's winning ugly. That's another way of putting it. Henry, what do you make of it?
So I think the danger here is that Starmer ends up falling into exactly the same pit that the Conservatives did, because, yes, he's got a very big majority in parliamentary terms, but in terms of actual seat majorities, this is the most marginal parliament since 1945. And that means that all of those Labour MPs who just run true blue seats, they're looking at their small majorities and, you know, are they going to want to build any houses? Are they going to want to build any power plants? Are they going to want to... So Labour, like, with this country's problem, the fundamental challenges that it has, they stretch back to before 2016, before 2010 even, you know, per capita GDP growth, which is what living standards means, productivity, real wages. And the idea that Labour are going to fix that overnight with a really uncontroversial manifesto that doesn't involve challenging any of the fundamentals about how this country works is just for the birds. So I worry, essentially, that what we'll find out within 2 weeks, right? If Labour have a really bold King's Speech with some really controversial stuff in it, there's a chance that they might deliver by the end of this Parliament. But if they miss that chance, given this is a very long parliamentary session, if they flub it, there's absolutely no chance of them making a difference.
Interesting. Proof of that pudding's going to be in the eating, isn't it? Well, thank you very much for now, gentlemen. You're staying with me. Now, I'm Dawn Newsroom. This is GB News Saturday, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. Don't reform. Boris Johnson blames Pied Piper Nigel Farage in destruction of the Tories as he warns the Conservatives to avoid merging with Reform UK as he offers advice on how to fix the party. Is he right, though? All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't you dare go too far. It's a cracking show coming up.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
How deep is the rift between Prince William and Prince Harry? Well, it's been reported that Prince William is refusing to speak to Prince Harry and has even taken on the role of disciplinarian, which was once, of course, the job of Prince Philip. But has that job gone now to William? And does he indeed rule with a rod of iron? Well, joining me now to discuss this is the former BBC Royal correspondent Michael Cole. Himself has a lot of iron. Do you think this is a fair approximation of the character? After all, Michael Cole, surely the palace could do with a firm leader at the moment. Is Wills the man?
I think he is, Martin, and good afternoon to you. William, 42 last Friday. He's grown into the role of heir apparent. He looks good, he sounds good. Now, when the late Queen was alive, she was the chairman of the board, but the chief executive was definitely Prince Philip. She was the head of state, but he was the head of the family. He chaired the Way Ahead Committee. He liaised with the security services. And he laid down the law for a long, long time. Of course, Duchess of York, Sarah Fergie, was banished. And he also used to go through the invitation lists for any royal event, striking off people he didn't want there. So he was very much in charge. And I think the situation with William is that when he makes up his mind is made up. And he's doing extraordinarily well. And he's doing it without the daily support in public of his wife, of course. And we all wish Kate, the Princess of Wales, well and a speedy continued recovery. And I think the King will be welcoming his older son taking this more prominent role because, quite frankly, he can't do everything.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. You've got a nice cup in front of you now. This is GB News Saturday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. Or you could have a pint, by the way, it's football. Now, Boris Johnson blames Pied Piper Nigel Farage for the role he played in the destruction of the Tories. The former Prime Minister has also warned the Conservatives to avoid merging with Reform UK, saying when we get back in, don't be too hasty to get rid of successful election-winning leaders. Oh, right, OK. I want to know, is he right, though? So let's see what my super panel make of this. They've been getting on way too well already. Henry Hill and James Schneider. I mean, chit-chatting during the break like mates. I mean, come on. Have a heated debate, gentlemen. Right, OK, so Boris Johnson is saying the Tories can do this on their own, Henry. You know, we're going to go in. We don't need reform. Is he right?
I mean, they certainly shouldn't merge with Reform now. The big question is what happens at the next election, because Reform came second in 98 seats. A lot of those seats are Labour-facing seats where the Tories are nowhere. If Reform get into Parliament with 20, 30, 40 seats in large parts of the country, that's it. The right is structurally divided. At some point, 10, 15 years down the line, you're going to have a Canada-style merger. But for now, Boris is right. But I think the shameless thing about this is what's the single biggest driver of Reform UK getting in? It's the Conservatives catastrophically breaking their promises on immigration. Who broke that promise? Boris Johnson. He won a mandate in 2019 to deliver Brexit and bring immigration under control, and he used the points-based system to massively liberalise the system. That's his fault, and I honestly admire his chutzpah, just being able to blame other people for that, but that was him that did it.
James?
Well, the Conservatives, of course, have no right to rule, and I think saying, oh, it was the fault of these other people that our party that's been in power for 14 years got turfed out by the electorate that hates them is a bit rich. But sort of analytically, he's right. What has happened in this election, compare it to 2019, Labour got fewer votes in this election than in 2019.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
So the thing that has happened is the right bloc, if you like, has completely splintered between Reform voters and Conservative Party voters, and that's why Keir Starmer has this enormous landslide. So he's right, but he's right analytically, but he's not right politically. You can't just say, well, if people are opposed to what we're doing, they should shut up and let us get on with it, otherwise the other side might win. is basically saying that you have a right to rule, and of course nobody has a right to rule.
And of course this was one of the big problems with the Tory general election campaign, is that they kept trying to play all the old hits like law and order, crime, taxation,
and no one's
the public
listening.
were like, but you've raised the tax burden to the highest level since 1948. You've tripled net immigration since you came into office. You know, you're about to have a prisons crisis where you let people out early. Like, so this bizarre thing where, like, oh, you better vote for us just because the other lot will be worse, only works if you're actually delivering at least a bit on your voters' priorities. And it was the Conservatives that failed to do that. So they're absolutely not entitled. They need to win Reform voters back, but they're not entitled to those votes.
Now, I mean, Nigel Farage, for his part, has repeatedly suggested he would not wish to join the Conservatives. However, there are some in the Conservative Party, I think Suella Braverman being one of them, that said she would get in bed with Boris Johnson. I'm sorry for that mental image. It's probably wrong, but you know what I mean.
I think that some kind of merger doesn't have to be a formal merger. It could be one is taking over the other, but something which brings together those two voter groups that are fundamentally more aligned than they're disaligned is likely to happen, I think. But we can't know the future, so you can't know whether that's the Conservatives get a new leader, that new leader starts doing quite well, and sort of Reform merges underneath. They might run, you know, possibly in an electoral pact where Reform run in 100 seats and the Conservatives run in 500 seats or something like that. But fundamentally, I think the main pole of opposition, unless people on my side of politics, we get our act together and we provide one, to a do-nothing Labour government when the macro situation for most people is very bad and is unlikely to get magically better, is going to be a kind of Reform-like politics, which will either be led by the Conservative Party or Reform.
I mean, Henry, I mean, you have a Conservative home, so you know what you're talking about with the Conservatives. Is it possible they can come back from this? I mean, it was a fairly resounding get out now, we don't love you anymore, wasn't it? I mean, that's what the vote was. It wasn't voting for Labour per se, because it was just voting to get the Tories out. Now, we know when a party's been in power for a long time that happens, but if they don't get into bed with Nigel Farage and Reform, can they rebuild from where they are now?
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't mean they will, but they can. As I said, this is the most marginal parliament since 1948. So a lot of those Labour MPs sitting on quite small majorities in bits of the country that really do not normally vote Labour. So that's the first thing. Structurally, they're much, much bigger than Reform UK. And, of course, it depends on what Reform do, right? Because if Reform organise well, they use their short money well, they hone their messaging and their discipline, maybe they can entrench. But look at UKIP in the European Parliament. Like, they don't have a history of doing that. There's a chance that actually the wheels fall off Reform UK over the next 5 years, in which case Conservatives will have an opportunity to reconsolidate that right-wing bloc under one party. But as I said, if in 2029 Reform are disciplined and targeted and they break through in 20 or 30 seats, at that point you are talking about a Canada-style merger probably in 10, 15 years' time.
Interesting times. We're running out of time. God, it's going so fast. Right, I'm Dawn Neeson, evidently, and this is GB News Saturday, and there's lots more coming up on today's show. But first, it's time for the news headlines again with Ray.
Cheers, Dawn. 12:33. Our top stories. Sir Keir Starmer has opened his first cabinet meeting by telling ministers we have a huge amount of work to do. The new PM was applauded by his colleagues as they began the business of governing the country. Labour is expected to focus on its manifesto pledges, which include delivering economic stability and cutting NHS waiting times. Sir Keir will also need to prepare for a NATO summit next week in Washington, D.C., where discussions will include support for Ukraine. Well, French migrants are reportedly vowing to cross the Channel at the first chance they get following Labour's election win. According to The Telegraph, most migrants at a camp near Dunkirk said they were, quote, overjoyed when they were told that Rishi Sunak was no longer the Prime Minister. Sir Keir Starmer has previously promised to scrap the Rwanda deportation flights on day one if Labour reached power. 700 extra officers will police London this weekend due to a series of protests in the capital. The Met is set to deal with a pro-Palestine march, a counter-protest and an expected Just Stop Oil event. The force says they're placing conditions on those protests to minimise serious disruption and the impact on London's Jewish communities. The government has announced a new support package for Caribbean countries affected by the destruction of Hurricane Beryl. New Foreign Secretary David Lammy has increased funding up to £500,000. That money will be used to help those whose homes and livelihoods have been impacted by the Cat 5 hurricane. Right, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Ray. Now remember, let me know your thoughts on all the stories we're discussing today, because it's all about you, not us lot. It's really easy, she says, trying to remember how to do it. You visit gbnews.com/yoursay and join the conversation, or message me on our socials at GBNews, which is much easier. And there's loads more coming up on today's show, though. Sir Keir Starmer has reportedly killed off the Rwanda deportation plan on the first day of his premiership. But is this the right move for a government who claim immigration is their top priority? All of that and much more to come. I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel. You better not go too far.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. This weekend is rain for some and showers, occasional sunny spells, but still on the cool side. And we've seen some heavy outbreaks of rain this morning. That's due to this area of low pressure. That's going to be clearing its way eastwards, but driving some northwesterly winds, giving the cool feel. So quite a lot of cloud around through late morning into the afternoon, with outbreaks of rain across the central part of England and into East Anglia. Could be quite heavy at times. Elsewhere, it's a day of sunny spells and scattered showers, but like I said, we've got brisk northwesterly winds, so a cool feeling day out there, especially for parts of Scotland, staying at only around 12 degrees. As we go through Saturday evening, then that band of rain should move out towards the North Sea, but across Scotland, still a focus for some heavy showers. They could be thundery at times too, but notice temperatures here really struggling at around 11 or 12 degrees. Northern Ireland still seeing some showers as we go into this evening, but further across western parts, we should see something a little bit drier tonight and some late evening sunshine with a few showers still around for some of us. And as we go through this evening and overnight, showers continuing across Scotland and northern England, but into central parts of England and East Anglia in the southeast, turning drier. But as we go overnight, we'll start to see a rash of showers coming in towards the southwest and also parts of northwestern England. But temperatures generally around 11 or 9 degrees, cooler, fresher feel across parts of Scotland. So through Sunday morning then, we've got a focus for some showers across southwestern parts of England, but also across northwestern England as well. Could be heavy at times. And then into the afternoon, sunny spells and scattered showers breaking out more widely, turning a bit dry across Scotland with highs here of 15 degrees, 19 in the south.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hey, welcome back. It's GB News Saturday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. Hope you're having a wonderful weekend out there, brave new world, and you survived it. Well, so far. Now, Sir Keir Starmer has reportedly killed off the Rwanda deportation plan on the first day of his premiership. The Rwanda proposal is now effectively dead, a bit like the parrot in Monty Python, after the party pledged to kill the plans if they won the election. This is despite the new government setting illegal migration as one of their key Priorities. Let's see what my marvellous panel make of this. Who's still having group hugs in the studio? Yeah, stop it. Put each other down. James, it's like, OK, they're going to... I mean, Yvette Cooper, she's got a big job on her hands as the new Home Secretary, as they say. It's like, crack down on those criminal gangs. Has she said how yet?
Not really. Like most things, they've stood next to the government and said, well, they're rubbish, don't vote for them, and then they come in, now they have to deal with it. Of course, killing off... Weird phrasing, but whatever.
I didn't write
ending.
It, by the way.
No. That's, ending the Rwanda plan, which had never actually started, is a perfectly sensible.
Even Rishi Sunak didn't believe in it when it was Chancellor.
Yes, the Rwanda plan was. I mean, maybe some people thought it would work, but it was never actually going to work. So it's a red herring. If you want to talk about migration, you should be talking about what are the rules in which people can come in and how, and what are those conditions and how do those get set and how is there democratic accountability over them. What instead both parties have done is demonise the most vulnerable as a distraction away from not wanting to talk about other issues which might be falling living standards, it might be failures in all sorts of things which fundamentally take change. They require money and they require changes to the structures of our society and our economy. So it's almost a non-story that they've scrapped the Rwanda plan because it wasn't going to happen in the first place. Now the questions should be how much are they going to focus on this issue, and are they going to talk about it in a way which is humane, or are they going to talk about it in a way which drives politics away from where they would like it to be?
Do you agree, Henry? Do you think migrants have been demonised? You know,
I mean, to an extent in some quarters of the press, but it is a real problem. And also Starmer tried to run to the right of Rishi Sunak on migration.
Mm-hmm.
I remember in the debate when he accused Rishi Sunak of being the most liberal Prime Minister on immigration we've ever had. So Labour is, like it or not, quite vulnerable on this, because again, there's all those seats where reform came second, where if Labour comprehensively fail on migration. Now, Rwanda. The reason that Rishi Sunak ended up talking about Rwanda is because he needed to buy off Suella Braverman in the leadership contest. And the other reason is because he knew he needed to talk about immigration in the election, but he didn't want to talk about legal migration because that's tripled under the Tories, and dealing with that would involve showdowns with big business and the university sector, which he didn't want. So he just focused on Rwanda. The scheme itself, there was a world in which it might have worked, but it was a world in which the Tories started doing it in 2019, early 2020. It was a 5-year, having spoken to the people who designed it, it was a 5-year project. It was never going to work if you started it in 2022. But what's Labour going to do? They've talked about clearing the backlog, but the only thing that we can do on our own to clear the backlog is just let people through, which I suspect is what they're going to start doing. They'll just start rubber stamping applications. There's nothing about making it easier to return people, and there's nothing about interceptions in France or in other places to stop people coming here. So it's a very, very difficult problem, but there is absolutely no evidence that Labour is going to get a grip on it. And I suspect if they also don't do anything about the high levels of legal migration we have, they will pay a price for that in 2029.
James, do you think that, to clear the backlog, that's what Labour are going to do? They're going to rubber stamp people that are, the backlog we had, £7 million on hotels, etc., to house them. Do you think they will just sort of like, OK, we'll rubber stamp, you can stay? Do you think that's going to be a thing?
I think they need to put more resources into processing the cases. That's very clearly been the case. If you look at the figures from 2014, where almost every case was processed in 6 months, and now almost no cases are processed in 6 months. So clearly resources need to be there. I just want to say one thing about, you said Reform are in second place in a bunch of Labour seats, but also Labour have tried to do this sort of talk tough, dog whistling type politics that then with no policies behind it. So in the election campaign, Keir Starmer and Jonathan Ashworth came out and they singled out Bangladeshis, and that's why Jonathan Ashworth lost his seat. He lost his seat by 1,000 votes to an independent
supporting Gaza,
an independent in Leicester South, in part because of the anger of the Bengali community at being singled out and demonised for a problem which is nothing to do with them. So I think there is a lot of pressure, or there should be a lot of pressure, on Labour's other flank, if you like, from Greens, from Independents, from Left, etc., who say, we don't want this type of demonising language, and we don't want this type of politics which engages in performative cruelty.
Now, if they do get the amount of civil servants needed to process the applications of the people that are still here on this huge backlog, but some of them fell and some of them obviously will, won't they, Henry? What do we do with them?
Well, I mean, that's the problem.
Where do we send them?
So there's all kinds of reasons. Resourcing is part of it, but there are other reasons why they take longer than 2014, which is there are now so many grounds on which you can appeal. For example, Theresa May introduced the modern slavery legislation, which literally any applicant can file a modern slavery claim. That delays their claim by 2 years. But the other problem is, what do you do when you have failed them and the other country won't take them back? Because all of these people destroy their passports or get rid of their passports. It's actually incredibly easy to send people back anywhere if they have their paperwork. And the best case I ever heard for Rwanda was that because you would automatically be sent to Rwanda, and if you wanted to leave at the end of it, you'd probably want to have a passport, it would stop people throwing their passports overseas.
Right, OK, yeah.
So you need to have more deals like we have with Albania, bilateral deals, but also if you really want to crack down on it, you're going to have to look at some of the legal architecture that's currently in place around how people can appeal. Because if you don't streamline that, no amount of money is going to get people who fail out.
So, but what are we meant to do with them, James? I mean, the ones that fell, where are we meant to send them? What are we meant to do with them?
Well,
if they haven't got any papers, back to France? Are the French going to be happy with that?
So if someone, I mean, as Henry says, if someone is failed, then they should be returned to their country, which is why you want to strike deals.
We don't know that country.
Which is why you want to strike bilateral deals with other countries. If someone is failed, they will be assigned. The Home Office will think that that person is from a particular country. You know, let's say somebody says they're from country A, and the Home Office says, actually, no, we don't think you're from country A. That's why we're not giving you the refugee status. We think you're from country B. Well, then that's the country in which they should seek to resettle that person.
But that's not.
But if they don't have the paperwork, that country probably won't accept them. That's the problem. I've spoken to people in the Home Office. You can send people back to almost any country on earth as long as you can prove that they're that country's citizen. But understandably, many of those countries, if we just rock up with someone and be like, we think he's one of yours, they're not interested.
It's a dilemma, isn't it, for everybody? OK, well, we've run out of time, gosh. Right, we're trying to solve the problems of the world here. I'm Dawn Neeson, this is GB News Saturday, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. Now, the new PM is already putting up his bunting for tonight, bless him. But England must improve if they are to win their first European Championship. And things are starting to get serious in the quarterfinals. But the question everyone wants to know is it coming home? I'm not singing, don't worry, you're safe. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel, and we're talking football very soon.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Well, we've got quite an extraordinary story to talk to you about now, because a triple amputee war hero is launching a bid to become the first to sail across the Pacific Ocean non-stop, solo and unsupported.
Craig Wood was blown up as a teenager by the Taliban in Afghanistan, but now he's hoping to change the perception of disabled people and raise money for other limbless veterans like himself. And Craig joins us now. Morning.
So, Craig, you are extraordinary. You are planning to take up to 80 days to sail from La Paz in Mexico to Japan.
Yeah.
How many miles is that?
It'll be over 6,000.
Amazing.
Amazing. And it will take you how long?
The minimum it's going to take me is 60 days. It could be up to 80. Yeah.
And that's on your own. You've done plenty of this before, haven't you? You've done lots of solo sailing.
Yeah, I've done quite a bit of solo sailing, but not as big as this. It is the world's biggest ocean, after all.
And why that particular route?
I wanted it to be a challenge, not just for me, but for anyone.
Right.
So any able-bodied person can look at this and go, wow, that is difficult.
Yeah.
And so that was the main drive. Then it's become a bigger thing than that now. Now I'm raising money for charity, and I can truly inspire people to change their perception on what is possible for disabled people.
And if you don't mind, can we ask you what happened in 2009 in Afghanistan? What were the circumstances of your injury?
I was on a normal routine foot patrol. About 5 metres in front of me, a commando IED was triggered. And subsequently, I became a triple amputee. Both legs above the knee, left hand at the wrist, facial injuries. etc., etc.
The People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
As time passes, she could have said stump. You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Blimey, honestly. Welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. One of my guests claims to know nothing about football and then she spent the last 10 minutes talking about it non-stop. In any case, England must improve if they are to win, their first European Championship, and things are starting to get serious in the quarter-finals. Having needed extra time to get past Slovakia, a population of 5.5 million people, Gareth Southgate has reportedly been working on a new formation to tackle Switzerland and score goals. But the questions on everyone's lips is it coming home? Right, OK, now, as I said, one of my panel, called James, actually, well, I would say he's a football fan, but he supports Arsenal, so maybe it's a loose interpretation. The other one, Henry, supports himself. And he has got an interesting theory. So I'm going to come to you first, James. Excited? 5 o'clock kickoff tonight?
I'm anxious.
Coming home?
I'm anxious because we've been really bad. We have a fantastic. We've got the best team in the tournament. As in
some of the best players.
As in individual players, we have the best players in the tournament. And if you were to make a fantasy league side of who do you want from the Euros, a lot of them would be English in your fantasy 11. But right now they're playing like Man United. There's this huge gap between the back line and the forward line.
Just to interrupt, you can see live Downing Street now where they are hanging out the bunting. Oh, lovely. Ready for the game tonight. Marvellous.
Well,
I'm sure you've done the same at home.
I need to go home, and then
You're not going to go yet.
So England have basically been playing like Man United. They've been playing terrible football with a fantastic 11 of players. So if Southgate is working on new formation, that's good because they do need it because they are playing very, very badly with absolute superstars and hoping that individual moments of brilliance will save us. And that is what happened against Slovakia. In the 95th minute, we were 1-0 down. Phenomenal moment of individual brilliance. But that's not how a team wins. And it's not how Southgate has been England manager before. We've been far less good in terms of our players, and we've done well because we've had a solid base and a clear system. Now that it's sort of been thrown to the wind, and we're seeing the results. The results of boring football where we can't score goals, and we are giving chances to much inferior teams.
So, Henry, the 4-4-2 formation, the Christmas tree formation, what do you reckon tonight?
This is what I imagine hearing political analysis from me is like millions and millions of people. I can hear there's loads of technical stuff in there. It sounds really important. I've got no idea. I spend a football match asking my brother what the different lines on the pitch do.
Who hired him? Come on. Right, OK, so are you going to be getting behind England today once you discovered what the lines do? Actually, some of the players don't know.
I mean, generally, I occasionally watch football when my friends are watching it, and it's always incredibly stressful. I don't know how you guys do it all the time, right? It takes years off my life, but no. Currently, I will not be watching it. I mean, I wish the best. This is a problem. I wish the best to any British team competing. My country doesn't compete at international football. Sadly, even Scotland. Where's Team UK? Why doesn't my country get to have a football team outside the Olympics?
Team UK.
Yeah.
Team UK?
It's nice at the Olympics, but each of the countries that make up, each of the nations that make up our country
doesn't have a team.
Okay, right. I'm Dawn Neeson with GB News Saturday. Let's find out at least what the weather's doing. Who's doing it? It's Catherine. Here she is with your weather for you.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. This weekend is sunny spells for some of us, scattered showers around but still feeling cool. We've got low pressure generally in charge, that's moving its way eastwards, and northwesterly winds giving that cool feel for the time of year. So through this afternoon, any showers gradually easing later on, so turning dry across parts of England in towards the southeast, but showers still continuing across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland before further showers come in from the southwest. Temperatures tonight, though, under the clear spells, 10 or 11 degrees, but feeling fresher across parts of rural Scotland. So to start Sunday morning, there will be some drier and brighter weather around, especially across eastern parts to start the day. But further towards the southwest, we've got a focus for some heavy showers moving in from the south, heavy at times with the odd rumble of thunder, and coming into northwestern parts of England as well. Northern Ireland seeing a few showers as well, just into coastal areas, but across parts of Scotland, a little bit drier with plenty of sunshine, just some rain coming into Orkney and Shetland to start the day. So as we go through Sunday, showers continuing but actually becoming more widespread as we go through into the afternoon. Heavy at times, containing the odd rumble of thunder too. Across Scotland, dry here with some sunnier spells and lighter winds for many of us as well. So that will help with the temperatures, giving a slightly warmer feel where you do catch any sunshine. And across parts of Scotland, temperatures recovering up around to 15 degrees. Sunday evening then, we'll start to see showers fading away, turning drier with some late evening sunshine. But another area of low pressure is coming in towards the southwest. So as we go into Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday generally unsettled, but temperatures may be recovering just slightly.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Thank you very much, Catherine. There's lots more coming up on today's show. So Keir Starmer takes the keys to number 10 in a landslide victory as the new leader appoints his government with the NHS, immigration and housing top of the agenda. We'll bring you all the latest on that, but I'm not going to make our guest explain the offside rule. Right, so GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't go anywhere but have a cup of tea or a beer. Football.
Summer could be a scorcher, with your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. It's totally tax-free, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
The Royal Academy's annual exhibition has returned for the 256th time to brighten the summer holidays. It's the world's oldest open submission exhibition. Anyone can enter work to be considered for inclusion. I'm joined now by art critic JJ Charlesworth for his verdict. What is your verdict?
My verdict is you should go and see it. You are confronted with many things of varying quality, selected by artists, and you very much, instead of being given something to you that's supposed to be good, you have to make your own decision.
I went along yesterday, and I personally did see some pictures on the wall that I thought were absolutely stunning. I'm going to mention Peter Ucker, which I think is a remark. And now these are the two by Ben Jonson, Grundtvig 1, and we've got one coming out of Berlin Pool. I think that's an absolutely stunning piece of work. And then Claire Douglas should be up. Here we are, Claire Douglas.
Yes.
Souvenir from the Anthropocene.
Yeah.
That last one, actually, a very witty painting.
A piece like that was really interesting. I think it caught a lot of people's eye because it had very kind of humorous, slightly bleak take on post-Brexit Britain. It's set in this fictitious world of Brummington, which is a sort of loose satire on Birmingham. I thought it was a bit mean.
I think we had maybe Black Lives Matter. We had Boris Johnson. I think our own Jacob Rees-Mogg made his way into the painting.
Yeah, so there's definitely a slant, a political slant, on the part of the artist. But even that said, I thought it was an interesting and enjoyable work, even though maybe you don't agree with the artist on what they're trying to say. And I think that actually made for an interesting moment, because you're seeing that people are disagreeing, right? Both through the artwork and in front of artworks.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello and welcome to GB News Saturday. I'm Dawn Neeson for the next 2 hours, keeping you company on telly, online and digital radio, keeping you up to date on the stories that really matter to you. Cracking hour coming up, so you don't want to move. Our new Prime Minister will be holding his first ever press conference at Number 10. As soon as Starmer arrives, we'll be there live to hear what he has to say, and that's going to be interesting, isn't it? Meanwhile, Boris Johnson blames Pied Piper Nigel Farage for the role he played in the destruction of Tories, as he warns the Conservative Party to avoid merging with Reform UK, as he offers advice on how to fix the party. Does he have a point? No. And away from the election, it's coming home. I'm going to sing it at one point. England must improve if they are to win their first European Championship, and things are starting to get serious in those quarter-finals. But the question everyone wants to know is... OK, now, but this show is nothing without you and your views, and if you send them in very rapidly, I promise not to sing. Let me know your thoughts on all the stories that we'll be discussing today by visiting gbnews.com/your say. Remember, and join the conversation or message me on our socials at GB News. But first, it's time for those very important news headlines with Ray Addison.
Thanks, Dawn. 1 minute past one. In fact, we're going to go straight to Downing Street now, where the new Prime Minister is speaking.
And yesterday we started the work of changing the country. And as the dust settles on Thursday's result, what is becoming clear for, I think, all to see is the mood of the nation, of the country, what is expected of us, and the mandate that we have to deliver change. It's a mandate not just to govern, although it is certainly that, but it's a mandate that has put trust in us to change the country and to deliver. And it's a mandate to do politics differently, and that change started yesterday as well. I have, as you'll have seen, appointed a cabinet. That was done yesterday afternoon and completed. Some went to the Privy Council this morning to receive their seals, which was a moment in history. We followed that with the first cabinet meeting of the Labour government of 2024. At that cabinet meeting, I had the opportunity to set out to my cabinet precisely what I expect of them in terms of standards, delivery, and the trust that the country has put in them. And yesterday I met Laurie Magnus, the independent advisor on standards, to discuss how we deliver in government. At the cabinet meeting, I also discussed mission delivery, how we would put into action the plans that we had set out in our manifesto, and that we will have mission delivery boards to drive through the change that we need, and that I will be chairing those boards to make sure that it's clear to everyone that they are my priority in government. We also talked about preparations for the King's speech, and I reminded the entire cabinet that we will be judged on actions, not on words. This afternoon, I will continue to make a number of front bench appointments. We clearly, on Thursday, got a mandate from all four nations. For the first time in 20-plus years, we have a majority in England, in Scotland, and in Wales. And that is a clear mandate to govern for all four corners of the United Kingdom. And therefore, I shall set off tomorrow to be in all four nations. I shall go first to Scotland. I shall then go to Northern Ireland, then to Wales, and then back to England, where I will meet the First Ministers, not just to discuss the issues and challenges of the day, of course we will do that, but also to establish a way of working across the United Kingdom that will be different and better to the way of working that we've had in recent years, and to recognise the contributions of all 4 nations. On Thursday, we also got a mandate on economic growth, the #1 mission of the Labour government. And so we discussed at Cabinet and have started the work on driving growth and to make sure that growth is everywhere across the whole country so that people are better off everywhere, wherever they live. The principle I operate to is those with skin in the game know what's best for their communities. And that does require us to be bold about pushing power and resource out of Whitehall. And therefore, when I return from the 4 nations, I shall hold a meeting of the Metro Mayors to discuss with them their part in delivering the growth that we need across the United Kingdom. That will be on Tuesday. That will include non-Labour Metro Mayors. There's no monopoly on good ideas, and I'm not a tribal politician. And the principle I operate to, whether it's mayors or other elected representatives, is that where regional leaders want to deliver for their area, then regardless of the colour of their rosette, my door is open and my government will work with them. Later on Tuesday, I shall set off to Washington for the NATO summit. I've already had a number of international calls, as you will know, and as you would have expected, to establish the relations across with other countries, to have really important discussions about Ukraine and other pressing issues. And Washington will be an opportunity for me to have further discussions with some of the leaders I've already spoken to and some that I'm due to speak to. It is, of course, an important summit on NATO. It is for me to be absolutely clear that the first duty of my government is security and defence, to make clear our unshakable support of NATO, and, of course, to reiterate, as I did to President Zelensky yesterday, the support that we will have in this country and with our allies towards Ukraine. So this will be a politics and a government that is about delivery, is about service. Self-interest is yesterday's politics. I want a politics and a country that works for you. Thank you very much, and I will now take a number of questions, starting, I think, with Chris.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Chris Mason, BBC News. You've said that change can't be delivered by flicking a switch, but plenty of people might want lots of switches flicked pretty quickly. And so I wonder how soon you could actually start delivering concrete change. And if I may, have you unpacked yet? Have you found your way around?
Well, they're 2 different questions. Look, I'm restless for change, and I think and hope that what you've already seen demonstrates that, not least the appointment yesterday of Patrick Vallance and James Timpson, 2 individuals who are associated with change and delivery. And it won't surprise you to know that the discussions I had yesterday with them were not the first discussions I've had with them. We've been talking to them for some time about the need for the change that we will put in place. But look,
We are actually having some issues with the audio with actually hearing Sir Keir Starmer, who is giving his first press conference live from Downing
ahead of the
Street.
election result,
We've got him back.
but we have been planning for months, hitting the ground running. I have had extensive conversations myself, as has the now Cabinet, with all those that they need to deliver with, which are to ensure that we can hit the ground running and put into place the plans that we need. There'll be further announcements coming over coming days, but that preparation has been extensive over the last 6 months. I've required all of my now Cabinet to have gone through on their brief the decisions that need to be taken, the people they're going to talk to in relation to those decisions. That work has been going on for 6 months or more, and that means we can hit the ground running. But look, it is not an overnight exercise changing the country. Thank you, Chris. I'll go to Beth, please.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Prime Minister, you have won a massive majority, but your vote share is quite low. It's much lower in terms of voter support than Blair in 1997. You talk about the mood of the country. I think you have some ideas as to why. Can you give us one concrete thing that you will promise voters you will deliver in your first 100 days to make them believe the change message? And if you'd indulge us, millions of people saw that exit poll drop. Some of them gasped. What was your emotion when you saw it? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Look, the thing that's changed already is the mindset of government. It's a mindset of service, of country first, party second. That's not a slogan. That is the test for all of our decisions. So when submissions come to me from the Cabinet, when I've had to take decisions, which I've already had to, of course, the principle is country first, party second, and that's the driving principle. So that change has already happened. I set out before the election what our first steps will be. We've started work on those first steps. You've seen where Streeting made clear the steps he's already taking to resolve some of the issues that have been unresolved for some time, with a degree of raw honesty as well as to the state of being. So that's the mandate. That's how we go forward. And look, you know, in relation to the outcome on Thursday, it is a clear mandate. We argued for change. We've got that mandate, and we've got it in for all 4 nations, and that is really important for us as well. I was pleased to see that exit poll. I didn't believe it until, like everybody else, I stayed up to watch every single result come in. Peppered with the speeches I gave, including the one at 5 a.m. at the event that we held. But it was only as the final results came through that I was confident that we'd got to where we needed to be to do the work that we need to do. Chris, I didn't answer the second part of your... As to finding my way around, I've got a basic understanding of the rooms I've used so far here, and that's good, but there are plenty of hidden places I'm yet to discover. And no, we're not unpacked quite yet, but we will be soon, and we'll be moving in soon. But there's a bit of work to do before then. And of course, I'm off to Washington on Tuesday. Thank you very much, Beth. Robert.
Robert Preston, ITV. Prime Minister, you talk about the need for a reset. One of the lessons of Labour governments is the need to take the tough decisions early. We've already heard from Wes Streeting that, in his view, the policy now of the NHS is that it is broken. If, in the coming weeks, as you go through department by department, you find that things are worse than you expected, are you prepared to take tough decisions early, including possibly raising more from taxation? And then secondly, just on Beth's point about how you've won the biggest majority relative to the size of the vote in history. You said yesterday that your priority would be to govern for those who didn't vote for you. Some 80% of British voters didn't vote for you. That's including those who didn't vote at all. What does that mean in practice, in a sense, for the culture of the government and how you'll govern?
Thank you, Robert. Look, in relation to the tough decisions, we're going to have to take the tough decisions and take them early, and we will. We will do that with a raw honesty. And that's really what sat behind Wes Streeting's description yesterday of the NHS as being broken. It is. Everybody who uses it and works in it knows that it is broken, and we're not going to operate under the pretense or language that doesn't express the problem as it is, because otherwise we won't be able to fix the problem as quickly as we need to. And we'll continue in that vein. There are other issues. Prisons would be an obvious example where other parts of the system are broken, and we're going to have to approach that with a raw honesty as well. And we will take the tough decisions. But that is not a sort of prelude to saying there's some tax decision that we didn't speak about before we're about to announce now. It's about the tough decisions to fix the problem of being honest about what they are. On the second part of your question, it was very important to me to say what I said on the steps yesterday about those that didn't vote for us, because we're a government of service to all people, whether they voted for us or not. And I include within that people who voted Labour for the first time on Thursday, because across the country in many places people will have voted Labour for the first time, perhaps never having voted Labour before, and I recognise that, and that they've put their trust and confidence in us. And we have to repay that, so we hold them in our mind's eye. People who didn't vote for us need to know that we will serve them, that we will not turn our back on people just because we don't think they voted for us. We'll govern for the whole country. And that's what I meant by what I said yesterday. It's about taking the country forward and doing that, in conjunction with our First Ministers, doing that in conjunction with our mayors and other elected representatives across the areas, so that we can govern for the whole of the country and take the country forward and turn our back on tribal politics and simply picking issues we want to fight just for the party politics of it. That's what's gone wrong, in my view, in the last few years, where priorities are simply set by party advantage rather than country first. And that's an example of what I mean by country first, party second. And that's the approach we'll take. Thank you, Robert. Paul, Channel 4.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Firstly, have you got used to hearing yourself get called that yet? And secondly, if I may, just picking up on Chris's point there, that you said progress isn't going to be like flick of a light switch. You've said that it's going to take a while. But for people at home who are feeling pinched, who are feeling desperate, when can they expect things to start getting any better? A year from now, 2 years from now, before the next election, or perhaps never?
Well, look, on the first question, yes, I'm getting used to it. I'm very happy to be called Keir or Prime Minister. I do recognise, and I said this to the civil service yesterday, why for them it is important to refer to the office holder as Prime Minister, because they're serving the office. I recognised this when I was Director of Public Prosecutions, and it is actually important to them to use the title, because it reinforces in them what they are doing by way of public service, and I respect that and understand that. I'm perfectly happy to be called Keir, but I do recognise why that happened. On change, the work has started. And we will deliver change as quickly as we can, and that will include change, within the early months and years of the government. It won't be a question of simply saying nothing's going to change until towards the end of the first term, but different change will be delivered at different speeds, inevitably. What I can't pretend is that we can fix everything overnight. The obvious example of that is the mess the government, or the last government, made in relation to prisons. They mismanaged the building programme. Half the money hasn't been spent. The tough decisions weren't taken on planning. We don't have the prisons we need. And I can't build a prison in 24 hours. But we can get to grips with the planning aspect of that straight away. We can push on. Half the money has not been spent, and we will do that straight away, but it'll take time. Thank you very much. Aggie from LBC.
Thank you very much. You've mentioned prisons now a couple of times, Prime Minister. I wonder whether you agree with your new prisons minister that only a third of people in prisons should definitely be there.
Well, look, the prison minister has huge experience here and has invested a huge amount over many years in relation to prisons, and that's why I wanted to make that appointment. We do need to be clear about the way in which we use prisons. We need to get away from the fact that for so many people come out of prison, they're back in prison relatively quickly afterwards. That is a massive problem that we have in this country that we do need to break, and that's why I was very pleased to put James into post, someone who hasn't just talked the talk, has actually walked the walk for many years in this respect, and I think I was very pleased to make that appointment, very pleased to have spoken with him about the change that we can bring about. Thank you. I'll go to Caroline.
Thanks very much. Caroline Wheeler from the Sunday Times, and congratulations, Prime Minister, on your victory. It seems to be a theme here that we're talking about you want to hit the ground running. I'm just wondering, in terms of the NHS, when can you commit to getting those 40,000 additional appointments up and running? Is that something you can do within the first year? And as you head out towards NATO, how quickly do you think that you can reach 2.5% on defence spending in terms of GDP? And if I may, just something very close to my heart, will you recommit to the previous government's proposals to compensate the victims of the contaminated blood scandal, which is estimated to cost £12 billion?
Let's do those in reverse order. The third answer is yes. It's very important for reasons that you know better than most in terms of your personal involvement in the campaign that led ultimately to a belated but at least better outcome. So yes is the answer to that. On the 2.5%, look, we are committed to it for all the reasons I said in the campaign. It will have to be done within our fiscal rules. And it will be done within our fiscal rules. But the strategic review will start shortly of our capabilities and an assessment of what is needed where. That we can do straight away. But the commitment to 2.5 is real, but it will be within our fiscal rules, and we will not be tempted, as the last government was, to pretend that money is there now, which isn't there. In relation to the NHS, and particularly the 40,000 extra appointments, the work on that starts straight away. And the way we will approach this is in St Thomas's Hospital just across the way, and other hospitals, Leeds is an example, they have already done this of their own volition, because they were so concerned about the impact of waiting lists on their own hospitals that they set up schemes to work evenings and weekends, and we've talked through with them how they did it. We will use them around the country now, and they've agreed to this. They will go across the country to be deployed to help set up the model in other hospitals as quickly as we can. So I can't say by date X it will happen, but we've already had quite some discussions about how that will be rolled out from day one. And there will be other announcements from various members of the Cabinet in coming days about the actions that we're taking on a number of fronts. Thank you, Caroline. Toby.
Prime Minister, congratulations on your victory. One of the things that many of your MPs and people who voted for you will be hoping to hear early on in your premiership is some commitment to tackle the issue of child poverty. Can you give a guarantee that you intend to get rid of the 2-child cap on child poverty as a first part of that process?
What I can, I mean, the answer today is no different to the answer a week ago, you'll be pleased to know, because I said some tough things in the campaign because I meant them, and I wasn't going to do what others had done, which is to say sweet things on the way in, only to do a press conference like this 2 days later or 3 days later saying we can't do any of that. And so 2-child benefit is an example of that difficult decision. Absolutely understand how difficult it is, how important it is, and I'm not shying away from that. But you know, we intend to have economic stability. We intend to ensure that we stick to our rules, and that is why I can't make a commitment on the 2-child benefit. What I can say is this: we have, and we're already setting up the child poverty strategy, which will deliver a reduction in child poverty. I'm determined to do that. It will be a measure of what this Labour government does, just as it was a measure of the last Labour government that drove down child poverty. I don't want any child living in poverty. And so that strategy will be developed, and as soon as we're able, I'll share with you more details in relation to that. But the fact that I can't make the commitment on the 2-child benefit does not mean that we're parking the strategy on reduction of child poverty. On the contrary, it makes it all the more urgent, and we will be working on that and started on that already. Kate.
Thanks, Prime Minister. Can I just go back to the question of prisons? Your Prisons Minister, James Timpson, said precisely this: we are addicted to punishment. People are in prison who should not be, i.e. they're given a prison sentence and they shouldn't be. Do you agree, yes or no? And are you going to continue with the early release of prisoners? Very quickly, Rwanda scheme, is that dead and buried?
That's 3, Kate, in 1. Look, the Rwanda scheme was dead and buried before it started. It's never been a deterrent. look at the numbers that have come over in the first 6 and a bit months of this year. They're record numbers. That is the problem that we are inheriting. It has never acted as a deterrent, almost the opposite, because everybody has worked out, particularly the gangs that run this, that the chance of ever going to Rwanda was so slim, less than 1%, that it was never a deterrent. The chances were of not going and not being processed and staying here, therefore, in paid-for accommodation for a very, very long time. It's had the complete opposite effect. And I'm not prepared to continue with gimmicks that don't act as a deterrent. In relation to early release, look, we are, as I've actually said before the election, we're going to have to deal with the problem we've got with prisons. There is no overnight solution to the problem. We've got too many prisoners, not enough prisons. That's a monumental failure of the last government. On any basic view of government, to get to a situation where you haven't got enough prison places for prisoners, it doesn't matter what your political stripe, that is a failure of government. It's a failure of government to instruct the police not to arrest. This has not had enough attention in my view, but it's what happened. We will fix that, but we can't fix it overnight, and therefore it is impossible to simply say we will stop the early release of prisoners, and you wouldn't believe me if I did say it. In relation to prisons and the people that are there, look, I've sat in the back of I don't know how many criminal courts and watched people processed through the system on an escalator to go into prison. And I've often reflected that many of them could have been taken out of that system earlier if they'd had support. And that is why what we want to do with our youth hubs and on knife crime is really, really important, because I want to reduce crime. I want to ensure less people are going into crime. There is a point of intervention, I think, in the early teenage years of children, young people, I think particularly boys in my experience, where we can reach in and ensure some of them do not get on that escalator. It's difficult, it's hard work, it can be done, but if you can pull people out before they get on the escalator that ends up in imprisonment, that means that they have more productive lives and that they don't have the victims of their offences. Knife crime would be an example. It is a clear priority for me on knife crime, and we will begin that work very quickly on knife crime to reduce it. But one way, there are a number of ways that are included in that, but one way is to reach out and stop people getting into knife crime in the first place. Difficult to do, but I'm determined to do it, because otherwise you and I will all sit at the back of courts watching the same people being processed over and over and over again into our prisons, where it costs a fortune to keep them there and doesn't have the same effect on reducing crime that we could have if we intervened at an earlier stage. Thank you, Kate. Genevieve at the Sunday Telegraph.
Hello, Prime Minister. Given that it is your view that the NHS is broken, are you happy with the performance of the NHS Chief Executive, Amanda Pritchard, and will you be keeping her on?
Look, this is not aimed at the Chief Executive of the NHS. It's a reflection on the failure of leadership of the last government. But it is a raw honesty about the state of the NHS, because we will not fix it if we aren't honest. It's a tough thing to hear if you work in the NHS. Obviously, my wife works in the NHS, as I may have mentioned, but it's tough because if you work in the NHS, you're putting a huge amount in difficult circumstances. It's unrelenting. But you know, we have to be honest about this. It's broken, and our job now is not just to say who broke it, the last government, but to get on and start to fix it, which is what we will be doing, and Wes Streeting has already started on that work. Thank you. And then Mikey Smith from the Sunday Mirror.
Your cabinet has more members that went to comprehensive schools than any before, if I'm not mistaken. How important was it to you that your top team reflect the country they're going to be running? And quickly, if I may, should we expect any more peerages to be given to experts so you can bring them into your team?
Just on the first question, I'm really proud of the fact that my cabinet reflects the aspiration that I believe lies at the heart of our country, that aspiration that so many people have, wherever they started from, to make a journey in life for themselves, for their families, their communities, and ultimately for their country. And I said that at the Cabinet meeting this morning, that I'm proud of the fact that we have people around that Cabinet table who didn't have the easiest of starts in life, but to see them sitting in the Cabinet this morning was a proud moment for me and for this changed Labour Party, and a reinforcement of my belief in that aspiration, which is a value that I use to help me make decisions. It's an anchor for me. In relation to future peerages, well, look, I don't want to get ahead of myself. We are making further appointments this afternoon in relation to the front bench. But I think you can see from the appointments I made yesterday just how important they are. You know, Patrick Vallance, I think anybody who knows him knows his commitment to delivery, James as well, and of course Richard Hermer as Attorney General, who has already taken the opportunity to make clear the importance of the rule of law in the decisions that we take and the way that we operate as a government. Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.
What international question?
Thank you.
OK, right. I'm sorry, I'm transfixed by that. It was so fascinating there, wasn't it? Right, now, I mean, so far I have heard that we are going to have change. Change at some point, I think, was the main message. He is travelling around all four nations to meet up with the leaders of the all four nations. Unification, that's what he's about. He's also willing to work with all political parties. I mean, does that include reform? I mean, ask him for a friend. And Beth Rigby from Sky did ask can you give us the one concrete thing you deliver in the first 100 days? And I believe Keir Starmer mentioned change. Didn't actually specify what he was going to change. Now, I've got a brilliant panel with me to discuss that, and we've all been paying rapt attention, haven't we, gentlemen? Alex Cairns and Albie Amakona. I'm going to come to you first, Alex. I mean, you're young. I mean, you know, Keir Starmer is trying to appeal to the young voters here. Were you convinced by what you've heard just now? I mean, is he your Prime Minister?
That's an interesting question. I think, you know, time will tell. I agree with you. I don't know if there was a lot of detail on there. I definitely like the fact that he's talking about working cross-party. I think it's very, very important. You know, the reality is you've got 34% of the vote. You know, when we polled young people just before, about 50% said they were going to vote for him. But actually, everyone else went, you know, elsewhere. Green Party, Lib Dems, some went to reforms. Actually, it's very interesting to see the fact that a lot of young people will feel very easy, like a Marmite, you know, like some people like him, some people don't. And he needs to, you know, win them over, essentially, yeah.
Albie, were you impressed by Keir Starmer's first press conference?
I don't know if impressed is the right word.
We did have to prod you to keep awake.
I think Keir Starmer, look, he's got an impressive CV. He delivered an impressive electoral win. I don't think he is an impressive speech giver or an impressive media performer. Boris Johnson was very good at that. People get very excited about Boris Johnson's speeches, not been very excited about really any Prime Minister since Boris Johnson's speeches, to be quite frank. But I think the point about change and delivery is an important one. I think one of the questions that was asked was, how long will it take until the change actually happens? I was on a show yesterday which takes lots of callers in, and one of the things that was really quite evident was that people wanted change, and they wanted change within 12 months. So the question is can the new Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, actually deliver any tangible changes to NHS waiting lists, to the cost of living crisis, to what's happening in education, and all of these issues that people were really quite angry with the Tories' inaction over? Can this Labour government actually create change in the first 12 months? I'm unsure.
What do you reckon, Alex? I mean, he did say, I mean, as we said earlier on, when you're in opposition, it's very easy to say, vote for us, we'll do better than them.
Yeah.
And that's what he also said there, even though he is now in charge. He goes, well, we're going to do better than the Tories. But the devil is in the detail, and I'm still not getting much detail. Look, granted, you can't change the mess in some of our services overnight. But where's he going to start? What's he going to concentrate on?
Yeah, I agree. And actually, they said a lot of things about, we're going to, focus on growth. It's very vague. We're going to try and create this new investment fund. We're going to work with business. The reality is, the country, people won't like to hear this, but actually, it's just the honest truth. Taxes at some point will need to go up because actually, a lot of things need investment. A lot of people, I know that we can disagree or agree about the Blair Brown years, but actually, what people liked is initially when they got in, they actually started to be quite radical from day kind of dot. Gordon Brown gave, monetary independence to the Bank of England. They did lots of things and they started to invest. And actually, we saw lots of things happen. Child poverty came down. I don't feel very inspired. And a lot of young people actually look at Starmer and think, we voted maybe for Labour to get rid of the Tories. But actually, what are they going to do about, the fact that lots of renters are having landlords put up their prices? What are they going to do about mortgages? A lot of people can't get a dentist appointment, for goodness sake. The transport. A lot of people thought that they were going to nationalise the energy. They're not going to nationalise the energy. They've got a new GB, whatever it's called. Actually,
funded by private investment.
Yeah, and it's very, very vague.
Like the energy companies are now.
Yeah, and I actually think that a lot of people want, in the first year, as you said, Albie, they want a lot of change. There's no point saying in an election we're going to change. Change what? And when are you going to change it? You can't change it in 3 years' time because then people will be really regretful that they put you in power. And
actually, a lot of you out there do keep your comments coming in, but I was saying exactly the same thing. I mean, David, I'll read, you say, all talk, no how, which is what I think a lot of people are saying, along with the lines that he is also actually quite boring.
Look, he's been Prime Minister for 24 hours. I would be surprised if we could say anything other than that he's all talk. Not much can happen in 24 hours, but a lot has to happen over the next 12 months. I don't think all of the problems, to be quite frank, that people want solving within a year are actually solvable within a year. They're not solvable within a year. So I think what the Prime Minister needs to do is be honest about that and say, well, look, the programme of change that I want for this country as the first Labour Prime Minister since Gordon Brown is going to take X number of years. We're going to put out these different sort of barometers so you can track us on our progress, and I'll keep updating you as I go, rather than the speech that he gave today, which was really no detail on anything and using vague terms like growth, change, respect, which no one really disagrees with. Actually, but what does it actually mean?
Well, exactly, that's the thing. And Lord Elpis has been in touch. One thing he has done is scrap the Rwanda plan. And as Lord Elpis says, it's fine to scrap Rwanda when he gets a better idea of what he's going to do about it, but not beforehand.
I agree.
Lots of you agreeing on that one as well. Now, you can also get in touch and let us know your thoughts on all the stories we're discussing today and what you make of Keir Starmer's first press conference as Prime Minister. It's very simple. Visit gbnews.com/your say and join the conversation, or message us on our socials. We're at GB News. Now, there is loads more coming up on today's show, including football and some fun, not all Keir Starmer. This is GB News, Britain's news channel, so probably time to grab a beer now. It's football nearly. And don't go too far.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. This weekend is rain for some and showers, occasional sunny spells, but still on the cool side. And we've seen some heavy outbreaks of rain this morning. That's due to this area of low pressure. That's going to be clearing its way eastwards, but driving some northwesterly winds, giving the cool feel. So quite a lot of cloud around through late morning into the afternoon, with outbreaks of rain across the central part of England and into East Anglia. Could be quite heavy at times. Elsewhere, it's a day of sunny spells and scattered showers, but like I said, we've got brisk northwesterly winds, so a cool feeling day out there, especially for parts of Scotland, staying at only around 12 degrees. As we go through Saturday evening, then that band of rain should move out towards the North Sea, but across Scotland, still a focus for some heavy showers. They could be thundery at times too, but notice temperatures here really struggling at around 11 or 12 degrees. Northern Ireland still seeing some showers as we go into this evening, but further across western parts, we should see something a little bit drier tonight and some late evening sunshine with a few showers still around for some of us. And as we go through this evening and overnight, showers continuing across Scotland and northern England, but into central parts of England and East Anglia in the southeast, turning drier. But as we go overnight, we'll start to see a rash of showers coming in towards the southwest and also parts of northwestern England. But temperatures generally around 11 or 9 degrees, cooler, fresher feel across parts of Scotland. So through Sunday morning then we've got a focus for some showers across south-western parts of England, but also across north-western England as well. Could be heavy at times. And then into the afternoon, sunny spells and scattered showers breaking out more widely, turning a bit dry across Scotland with highs here of 15 degrees, 19 in the south.
Sunday nights on GB News. From 6, Neil Oliver. At 7, it's Free Speech Nation with Andrew Doyle. At 9, Mark Dolan. And at 11, get set for the week ahead with headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Hey, welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. I hope you're having a smashing weekend out there. Now, just before we move on, something fun for you to do. It's time, yeah, drum roll please, for the Great British Giveaway. Your chance to win the biggest cash prize so far. That's an incredible £30,000 and it's totally tax-free. Well, so far. Which means that you'll get the lot to do whatever you like with. Just don't tell Keir Starmer. Here's all the details you need for a chance to become our next big winner. Good luck.
Summer could be a scorcher, with your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. It's totally tax-free, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good luck. I mean, just imagine the summer you could have with that amount of money. Now, back to politics. Yeah, Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson blames Pied Piper Nigel Farage for the role he played in the destruction of the Tories. The former Prime Minister has also warned the Conservatives to avoid merging with Reform UK, saying, when we get back in, don't be too hasty to get rid of successful election-winning leaders. OK. I want to know, though, is he right? And what leaders is he actually talking about? Let's see what my wonderful panel make of this. I've still got Alex Cairns and Albie Amakona with me. Albie, I'm going to come to you first on this one. Boris Johnson, don't get into bed with Reform, whatever you do. Very strong words, and he's got away with words, to be fair. Is he right, though?
The gall of Boris Johnson to blame someone else for destroying the Conservative Party, I just think, is absolutely unbelievable. Boris Johnson, when he was Prime Minister, oversaw the highest levels of net migration that this country has ever seen, and Priti Patel's liberalisation of the immigration laws post-Brexit ushered in this period of mass migration that we have seen, 3 times higher than under Gordon Brown. And that was at the point when the Conservatives came in, of course, in 2010 with the Lib Dem coalition under a promise to get immigration down to the tens of thousands. So the idea that Boris Johnson is going to blame the demise of the Tory party on someone outside of the Tory party when it's his policy failings, moral failings and inability to govern in a proper way that has caused this awful electoral defeat that we saw last night is just, quite frankly, unbelievable. So, Boris, be quiet.
Not a fan, I'm guessing, here. Alex, but the thing is, Boris talks and people do. We've just listened to Sir Keir Starmer, our new Prime Minister, talking, and I'm sorry, but there were people nodding off. I mean, but when Boris talks, people listen. So do you think the Conservative Party will listen to him or should listen to him about reform?
So there'll be a portion of the party that listen to him. I think what's going to happen to the Tory party is they're going to split in two. You'll have people that do think that they need to...
There's not many of them left.
Well, from the small number of MPs that they have, they are going to split, because I personally think they've actually got to pull to the centre. I actually think if you remember back in 2010, the Cameron kind of Osborne kind of strategy, I actually think from a centre-right perspective, that's probably more tactical way to go. There'll be some people that say no, but Reform won 4 million votes. But actually, the thing about on the far right, you've got to remember that actually the way that the system works in the UK, it's far easier to win a parliamentary majority if you're in the centre ground. If you move towards the right, like the far right, I think it's difficult to win a majority. So I actually think that I get where he's coming from, and I agree.
What is far right, by the way? I always try and get people to define what far right actually is. I mean, is Suella Braverman far right?
I think some of her perspectives are... I mean, listen, the reason I say far right is I think people that maybe won't say it publicly, but they have what I would say racist or very, very strong views that I don't agree with, right? You know, we're talking about, you know, some of Reform's ideas about wanting to only hire British and, you know, having this tax where they focus on hiring British. I don't really know what that means. And that's a dangerous kind of rhetoric we don't want to get into, because actually the country's relied on diversity for a long time. We've got, you know, lots of the NHS rely on immigrants. I don't really understand where this hire British comes from. So that's what I mean by far right.
Wasn't it Gordon Brown, though, just very quickly, we're running out of time, that said British jobs for British workers? Was it Gordon Brown? Labour Party came out with that.
I don't think there's anything wrong with a political party saying things like we want to invest in skills for British people and actually be self-reliant when it comes to the labour force that we need in order to sustain our economy. I don't think there's anything far right about that at all, in saying actually we need to get British people off welfare and into work. We need to get British people healthier so they are well enough to work. I don't think that is far right rhetoric, Alex. I think it is reasonable rhetoric, which is why we hear all political leaders, whether it is Rishi Sunak, Nigel Farage or Keir Starmer, speaking about things that I've just described.
But when he says British first, what does that mean?
What do you mean? Who said British first?
As in, Farage was talking about wanting to hire British first, you know, almost penalising companies that wouldn't hire British people. But I don't know what that means, you know.
Look, I think the policy idea that they had to have a higher tax on immigrant workers to encourage companies to use native talent, if you will, is economically illiterate, because it's actually going to increase costs for businesses and increase burdens for businesses, and actually makes the United Kingdom a less competitive place for international businesses to invest. So from a capitalist perspective, it's a bad idea.
Unfortunately, gentlemen, we are running out of time. Mr Farage, for his part, has repeatedly suggested he would not wish to join the Conservatives, saying the party is dead. Now, I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is GB News Saturday, and there's loads more coming up on today's really packed show. Now, England must improve if they are to win their first European Championship, and things are starting to get serious. It's the quarter-finals coming up 5 o'clock today. And the question everyone wants to know, is it coming home? All of that and much more. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't you dare go too far. See you soon.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
He fell into a coma. His family, of course, absolutely distraught. Because Turkey is outside the European Union, it therefore doesn't count under the Global Health Insurance Card scheme, which means that he is liable for these costs, and the family say that he's being held there for until they pay at least half the £41,000 that is owed.
One of our viewers here saying their premium, because they have health conditions, can be as much as £1,000. But if they're going to go overseas to, as you say, a non-EU country, they still should take it. That's the message here, isn't it? Don't take the risk.
Absolutely. Now, if you do have lots of pre-existing medical conditions, or you're an older person, my lovely mother-in-law is going to be 95 this week. She's still travelling, but only within Europe. and only because the cost of insurance is going to be many times the cost of the trip. And she just thinks, OK, well, I'll get emergency medical treatment free if I'm in the European Union and I've got that GHIC card. But beyond that, absolutely not. It's not worth the risk.
You have to have your card, do you, Simon, to get treatment within the EU? You should just apply for that online.
You should certainly apply for it online. Don't go to any of the scam sites that want to charge you money for it because it's a free card. But actually, if you haven't, it's absolutely not a huge problem. Yes, you have to go through a bit of rigmarole, or at least your family do, to sort it out. But in general, if you go to a public hospital, they will treat you first and ask questions later in the European Union. And if you're a British resident, you should get it for free. Even if you forgot to get the GHIC card, they will sort it out eventually.
Britain's election channel. GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hey, welcome back. It's GB News, Saturday, me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. Hope you're having a wonderful weekend out there. Football. We're talking football. Now, England must improve if they are to win their first European Championship. And things are starting to get serious in the quarter-finals. Having needed extra time to get past Slovakia, a country of 5.5 million people, Gareth Southgate has reportedly been working on a new formation to tackle Switzerland. All right, OK. But the questions on everyone's lips is it coming home? The trophy, not the team, by the way. Joining me is GB News reporter Jack Carson, who is actually, lucky you, out in Germany. Jack, what's it like? You having fun?
Guten Tag, Dawn. Well, welcome to Dusseldorf, where England, of course, play their quarter-final tonight against Switzerland. I just want to show you, really, how many thousands and thousands of England fans, of Switzerland fans, are all here at the moment, enjoying a drink, enjoying themselves. It really is quite a special atmosphere. But you do raise the right question, Dawn. Is it coming home? I mean, there's no better people to ask than a big England fan who is out here in Germany as well. Andrew, you've been here in Germany now. It's your second time, I think.
Yeah, it's my second trip here over here now, yeah.
Is it coming home?
I hope so, mate. If you're over there, the best thing tonight, just get the win, get through, semi-final. Just win the game, and that's what we have to do.
I mean, what do you make of this back three that Gareth Southgate's been flirting with, Saka and Trent Alexander-Arnold as wing-backs?
The back three today, right? If the back three, you've got two wing-backs, go for the game, just attack. We have to get through tonight. I don't care how we play. It's knockout football. We have to just get through and win the game.
I mean, Mark Gay's obviously suspended because of picking up too many.
Have we lost Jack there? No. OK. Oh, no, I think we've lost Jack there out in Dusseldorf talking to the fans who are getting ready for tonight's game. England are obviously playing... Who are they playing, Albie?
Switzerland.
Oh, well done.
Yes.
You know, yay, woo.
I can listen.
And what formation should we be playing?
Oh, I'm not sure. I think there are 11 players on a football team, and there is a goalkeeper, and some strikers, some midfielders, and they should all be in the formation that they need to be in to win.
Brilliant. Is that 4-4-2 or the Christmas foot tree formation?
Christmas foot tree.
Sorry. I don't know what you're laughing for. Alex, I'm going to ask you to explain the offside rule, because nobody understands that. Nobody understands it. At least all the players. I mean, it is nice to have, you know, we've all been through the election, we've come out the other side, but it is a bit like, it's like, this is our reward. I mean, hopefully it's our reward, hopefully we win. But it's like, it feels like, and breathe, it's like a bit of a nice relief.
No, I agree. You know, watching football is far more interesting than most people watching, you know, the press conference. And hopefully, you know, he does bring it home. You know, I hope he doesn't wing it again and actually uses all his subs, because that's what they're there for, you know.
Are you feeling confident?
Not after how we played against Slovakia, I'll be honest. I actually think, you know, I know that we heard from the fan about just attacking. You know, we've got a very good squad. He's got to utilise it. He's always afraid to make substitutions. You know, you've got a massive bench of talent, by the way. Use them and don't be afraid, and stop saying we felt this. You're the manager. Take responsibility and make the subs you want to make.
Oh, you will be watching it though, won't you?
I tend to get into football when England is playing in international competitions after the semi-final. I'm a huge glory hunter when it comes to football, and I think a lot of us are. So, look, I hope we beat Switzerland this afternoon. Is it happening this afternoon?
It is.
Because then I can really get into it, because then we'll be in the semi-final. That's right, isn't it? So, look, I'm excited because we might actually get the semi-final, and then I can really get into the football.
Albie's excited. I'm going to leave you hanging on that one. I'm Dawn Newsom. This is GB News Saturday, and don't go in. There's loads more coming up. But first, it's the all-important weather here with Catherine. Not Germany. I'm sure it's lovely out there. It might be raining though. Here's Catherine with the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. This weekend is sunny spells for some of us, scattered showers around but still feeling cool. We've got low pressure generally in charge. That's moving its way eastwards, and northwesterly winds giving that cool feel for the time of year. So through this afternoon, any showers gradually easing later on, so turning dry across parts of England in towards the southeast, but showers still continuing across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland before further showers come in from the southwest. Temperatures tonight, though, under the clear spells, 10 or 11 degrees, but feeling fresher across parts of rural Scotland. So to start Sunday morning, there will be some drier and brighter weather around, especially across eastern parts to start the day. But further towards the southwest, we've got a focus for some heavy showers moving in from the south, heavy at times with the odd rumble of thunder, and coming into northwestern parts of England as well. Northern Ireland seeing a few showers as well, just into coastal areas, but across parts of Scotland, a little bit drier with plenty of sunshine, just some rain coming to Orkney and Shetland to start the day. So as we go through Sunday, showers continuing, but actually becoming more widespread as we go through into the afternoon. Heavy at times, containing the odd rumble of thunder too. Across Scotland, dry here with some sunnier spells and lighter winds for many of us as well. So that will help with the temperatures, giving a slightly warmer feel where you do catch any sunshine. And across parts of Scotland, temperatures recovering up around to 15 degrees. Sunday evening then, we'll start to see showers fading away, turning drier with some late evening sunshine. But another area of low pressure is coming in towards the southwest. So as we go into Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday generally unsettled, but temperatures may be recovering just slightly.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Didn't sound too bad, though, did it? Now, there is lots more coming up on today's show. Sir Keir Starmer has given his first press conference since becoming Prime Minister. We'll bring you up to date on everything he had to say. All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't you dare go too far. Loads to come.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Phil was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
Hi, my name's Phil Cox. I just looked at my account and thought, oh my God, yeah, it's true, it's gone into my account. And if I can win it, anybody can win it.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained. I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Okay. Hi and welcome to GB News Saturday. I'm Dawn Neeson. For the next hour, I'll be keeping you company on telly, online and on digital radio. Keep you up to date on the stories that really matter to you. Before we go on to what's coming up, though, just a quickie. Earlier we were talking to Jack Carson live out in Düsseldorf for the England game, and someone may or may not have made a rude hand gesture. So if you did see that and you were upset, apologies. It might have been a V for victory. Who knows? In any case, coming up this hour, Sir Keir Starmer has given his first press conference since becoming Prime Minister. We'll bring you up to date on everything our Commander-in-Chief had to say. Then Boris Johnson blames the Pied Piper, Nigel Farage, role he played in the destruction of the Tories, as he warns the Conservative Party to avoid merging with Reform UK and offers advice on how to fix the party. Is he right, though? And away from the election, please God, England must improve if they are to win their first European Championship, and things are starting to get serious in the quarterfinals. And the question everybody wants to know is it coming home? That's the trophy, not the team, by the way. The team needs to stay out there, just a hint. Right, OK, but this show is nothing without you and your views, so let me know your thoughts on all the stories we're discussing today by visiting, remember, gbnews.com/your say, yay, and join the conversation or message me on our socials at GB News. But first, it's the news headlines with a very frisky Ray Addison.
Crikey. 1 minute past 2, our top stories from the GB newsroom. Sir Keir Starmer says Rishi Sunak's plans to send migrants to Rwanda is now dead and buried. Speaking after the first meeting of his new cabinet, the Prime Minister ruled out the controversial scheme, which had failed to deport a single one. He also said Labour's election victory has given them a, quote, clear mandate to govern in all four corners of the UK.
Look, the Rwanda scheme was dead and buried before it started. It's never been a deterrent. look at the numbers that have come over in the first 6 and a bit months of this year. They're record numbers. That is the problem that we are inheriting. It has never acted as a deterrent, almost the opposite, because everybody has worked out, particularly the gangs that run this, that the chance of ever going to Rwanda was so slim, less than 1%.
Well, the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, not overly surprised. He's claiming Labour will struggle to deal with the issue of illegal immigration.
Well, he said he would do it. At least he's kept a promise, I suppose. Look, Rwanda was never going to work. What Keir Starmer is proposing, which is to, tackle the gangs, well, frankly, the last government were doing that for the last few years. It's not going to work. At the minute, it's wild and windy, but we do have some pretty strong first-hand accounts that as soon as we get a calm spell, they'll be crossing the English Channel in their thousands. And let's face it, Keir Starmer does not have a plan to deal with it.
Former Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has ruled himself out of standing for the Tory leadership. When asked, he told GB News that the time has passed. He managed to hold on to his seat, Godalming and Ash, and has previously tried twice to become Conservative leader. Meanwhile, Suella Braverman has failed to rule herself out, simply saying there were no announcements. Police in Tenerife say Jay Slater's family can bring in their own search and rescue teams to look for the missing teenager. The 19-year-old went missing on the 17th of June after setting off on a walk back to his accommodation in Tenerife. That was a journey which would have taken him around 11 hours. Police called off the official search last week, but Jay Slater's mother says they will stay on the island to look for him. Well, in the US, President Biden is refusing to take a cognitive test to determine if he's in mental decline. In an exclusive interview with ABC News anchor George Stephanopoulos, he also dismissed calls from some Democrats to step aside and let a younger candidate take on Republican Donald Trump. Biden's been attempting to defuse the political crisis over his shaky debate performance. He claims he simply had a bad night.
Have you had the specific cognitive tests, and have you had a neurologist, a specialist, do an examination?
No, no one said I had to. No one said, they said I'm good.
Would you be willing to undergo an independent medical evaluation that included neurological and cognitive tests and release the results to the American people?
Look, I have a cognitive test every single day. Every day I have that test. Everything I do.
The government has announced a new support package for Caribbean countries affected by the destruction of Hurricane Beryl. New Foreign Secretary David Lammy has increased funding up to £500,000. The money will be used to help those whose homes and livelihoods have been impacted by the Cat 5 hurricane. That aid package also includes hundreds of emergency shelter kits capable of supporting up to 4,000 people. Well, the Prince of Wales is set to attend England's clash against Switzerland later in the Euros quarter-finals. The Prince, who's also president of the FA, will be cheering on Gareth Southgate's side in Dusseldorf as they hope to secure a place in the semis. Spain knocked out hosts Germany with a dramatic extra-time winner, while France beat Portugal on penalties last night. Kick-off this evening, 5 p.m. OK, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Ray. And he is very frisky, and I love the way he says crikey, don't you? So very Ray. Now, let's get stuck into today's topics. Now, Prime Minister Keir Starmer has been setting out his vision for a changed government. Speaking to the press in number 10 Downing Street, he promised to do things differently.
We're a changed Labour Party, and yesterday we started the work of changing the country. And as the dust settles on Thursday's result, what is becoming clear for, I think, all to see is the mood of the nation, of the country, what is expected of us, and the mandate that we have to deliver change. It's a mandate not just to govern, although it is certainly that, but it's a mandate that has put trust in us to change the country and to deliver. and it's a mandate to do politics differently, and that change started yesterday as well.
If you actually had change on your Labour Party bingo card there, you've just got a full house, by the way. And he did also mention his wife worked for the NHS, but he didn't mention what his dad did for a living. Not quite sure any of us know that. In any case, joining me now is someone who was at that press conference, our political editor, Christopher Chopper, who has been working around the clock for us and still bouncing around with excitement. Mr. Hope, how was it for you, dear?
Well, we met there with the PM, and hello, Dawn, again, in the state dining room of Number 10, not in the briefing room created by Boris Johnson, where they announced all those the COVID pandemic measures, which is for many people is such a difficult memory for us. I wonder whether that's a commitment to change from the old Tory government. I think the idea had been to have this press conference in the Rose Garden outside in Number 10, but of course the weather is so grim at the moment, they had to have it inside. And so there we were. And we heard, I think the biggest news there was he said, the Prime Minister, that the Rwanda plan is dead and buried. So far, £270 million of our money spent on this, sunk into Rwanda and Kigali, a receiving place for migrants being deported from this country there. That has gone. We expect to hear more shortly from the government about that. Of course, there are break clauses, so if they do exit now, they cannot spend, therefore, £100 million in 2025, 2026 on the scheme. And the PM also gave an idea of the busyness of his government. He said how he wants to put the economy at the heart of what the Cabinet does. The Cabinet, of course, met this morning at 11 a.m. till 12 p.m. He's given them very clear instructions to get on with growing the economy. They want to grow the economy, and then that will give them more space for the kind of agenda the Labour government wants to pursue. He's establishing 5 mission boards. Dawn, keep up at the back, please. This is boards to set up and ensure that you have a degree of direction on the 5 missions that the Labour government set itself. Keir Starmer will chair those boards to drive forward and ensure that they do deliver on the manifesto. He's told his civil servants, Dawn, to call him Keir or Prime Minister, but not Sir Keir, which is that's how he is. He doesn't like the knighthood in terms of being used all the time. He is very proud of it. He received the knighthood when he was made Sir Keir Starmer after some time as the DPP, the Director of Public Prosecutions, in 2014. But he said, call me Keir or call me Prime Minister. He's starting on a 4-nation tour of the UK, starting tomorrow, England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland. He claims he has a mandate as Prime Minister for all of those different nations. On Tuesday, he's meeting with the Metro mayors, and on Monday, he's meeting with, talking to at least, all of the devolved leaders in the country. And as we know, he flies away to NATO, to Washington, the NATO summit on Tuesday. Elsewhere on the Wes Streeting comments about the National Health Service, he called it raw honesty from Mr. Streeting, supporting him, saying that the NHS is broken. He wouldn't go further on the issue of paying paying benefits to families with more than 2 children, and he seemed to support his new prisons minister, James Timpson, of course, who said, who recorded telling Channel 4 on a podcast that he believes that only a third of prisoners should definitely be in prison. So that's where we got to. Sadly, he didn't feel able to take a question from GBNews. I had all sorts of questions, including your question about only a third of the country voted for you, Keir Starmer, but he didn't want to call GBNews this time. He called 5 other broadcasters before us.
Chris, just very quickly, we're running out of time, unfortunately. I'm sure you want to get somewhere dry. You've covered loads of these press conferences with various politicians of all different persuasions, as have I. Were you satisfied with how he performed today?
Yeah, I was actually. I think he gave full answers to everything. He didn't dodge away from anything. Some of his team hung around afterwards to brief journalists. I thought it was a very fair briefing. I think he basically, we haven't heard virtually anything at all about the future plans for this government. They wouldn't talk about it before Thursday. So I think, to be fair to Keir Starmer, he gave a fair account of what his plans is. He gave an idea of action, lots of travel planned, putting the economy at the heart of his mission in government. And here we go, 5 more years of this, Dawn.
Oh, Chris, I hope it stops raining at some point for you. 5 years of rain and you'll shrivel up to nothing. Mr Hope, live from Downing Street there, thank you very much. Please do go and get warm and dry. I think you deserve putting your feet up and have a nice cup of tea somewhere. Right, that was Christopher Hope. So, with our new Prime Minister's first ever press conference live from Downing Street. Let's see what my panel make of this. At this hour, I'm joined by the host of the Saturday Five, Darren Grimes, and political commentator Matthew Stadlen. Thank you very much for joining me on such a momentous afternoon, gentlemen. We've had our the Prime Minister's first press conference and answering a few questions, and obviously we've got football coming up. I'm going to come to you first, Matthew, because you're staring at me with that look you often give me. What did you make of what you heard Keir Starmer? We can call him Keir Starmer say today.
This is my first opportunity, thank you for having me, to respond on GB News, a channel which I often come on.
You're more than welcome.
I'm delighted to be here.
Don't kneel your part, get on with it.
I'm furious with Starmer.
Oh, OK.
I think he's failed already. The British weather has not improved since he became Prime Minister.
And he lied about working on Friday night, because he quite clearly worked on a Friday night and is also working on Saturday.
He didn't lie. He didn't lie. No, this is my... So there's no election to win at the moment, not for another 4 or 5 years, and I always gave my honest take anyway, but let's sort of leave party affiliations aside just for a moment. I've actually been pleasantly surprised because I never pretended that Starmer had much charisma. I don't think that was his strong point.
No.
And I don't think he inspires people particularly, perhaps not in the way that, say, a Tony Blair figure managed to, and for a certain bunch that Boris Johnson did for a while. So I was reassured that the way he seemed to me, and I didn't see all of the press conferences coming in, seemed to me so at home being Prime Minister. He seemed relaxed, he seemed calm, he seemed sort of in charge of his brief already, and importantly, and Chris mentioned this, he alluded to it, and I hope this continues, he did really seem to engage with questions. He also made it very clear, and it's in his interest to do so, that things are at a pretty low ebb. And why is that in his interest to do so? First of all, in my view, it's reality, but also because it gives him a little bit of space to start building this country back up again. And I'll just say one more thing for the moment, if I may. What Wes Streeting has said, for me, is the most interesting thing that has come out of government since the election. And why is it interesting? It's interesting because he didn't just say that the NHS is broken, and that's no slight to the vast number of hard-working, highly skilled people, from hospital porters to consultants who try their best to make our lives better and make us healthy. He didn't just say it was broken, he said that the fact that it is broken is now government policy. And that means, if we're to take him at his word, that there is real change on the way in the NHS. What form that takes, we'll have to wait and see. But only a Labour Health Secretary, I think, could say on day 1 or 2 of office that our beloved NHS is broken. If a Tory had said it, there's just no world in which a Conservative would have said it.
Exactly. I mean, Wes Streeting did say this before the election as well, didn't he? He did say that,
He said, don't treat it as a sacred thing. It is a service.
Not a cult.
Yeah.
Darren, what did you make of it? I mean, it is fair to say that Keir Starmer is not the most scintillating speaker in the entire world. He's certainly not a Boris Johnson, no matter what you think of their politics, or even Nigel Farage. But what did you make of what you heard him actually say?
I mean, I was really struck by the way in which I think, and I'm not in the middle of contract negotiations, I promise, but I actually think GB News is going to be such an important outlet during this period, the next 5 years, because the issues like net zero, Dawn, and issues like talking about what they might do in Northern Ireland in relation to our relationship with the EU, unionist communities are really quite concerned about someone like Hilary Benn, who is now Northern Ireland Secretary. And by the way, it's really strange, actually, watching Labour ministers walk up to the number 10 door, because we've not been used to it for such a long time.
Yeah, true.
But there is a real issue here, I think, of scrutiny, because I think there are far too many within the media who are going on in the most sort of glorifying, sycophantic way. I find it absolutely vile, I must say, so far, because it certainly has never happened with a Conservative government. So I think this channel is going to be an incredibly important voice. And all I can say is, Dawn, you look marvellous in blue, so thankfully someone's wearing blue.
Thank you very much. This isn't political, by the way. It's just Blue's turn today. All right?
On Darren's point, on opposition. I think you make a good one. As you know, I do not identify with a lot of what comes out of GB News, which is one of the reasons why I'm here pushing back against it and have been in recent years. But I do think it has an important voice because I believe, and I fundamentally disagree with a lot of what Nigel Farage says and stands for, but there is an argument to be made that he can hold the mainstream parties, now largely Labour, to account on issues that clearly do matter to a proportion of the British population. And while we're talking about opposition, which might seem a strange thing to say when Labour has just won a landslide, but it does matter in democracy, of course it does. And I am concerned because the Tories, and I've spent the last however many years trying to get them out of office and don't regret a second of it, but they are down to 121 seats. That is 44 fewer, I worked out, than they had in 1997 after Tony Blair's landslide. How on earth they provide an effective opposition, but also build themselves back into a party of government in 5 years, I don't know. And that is not to say that the electorate isn't volatile. For goodness sake, we swung from one landslide 5 years ago to a landslide entirely in a different direction a couple of days ago. But to build back from 121 is really tough.
I was going to say, I mean, you know, the combined vote of the big two, i.e. Labour and Conservative, is 57%. In 2010, it was 65%.
Yeah.
People are losing faith in the big two parties. I mean, yeah, it is a landslide. Labour won with a landslide, but they got 1/3 of the vote.
Absolutely.
And the vote was like 59% turnout.
And Britain is a country, I think, which is already voting in a way in which is more European than it is what is stereotypically British, traditionally British. We're voting in a way in which suggests that we already have PR instead of first past the post. And the two main parties, you know, Sir Keir Starmer didn't secure a bigger share of the vote than Jeremy Corbyn did.
Jeremy Corbyn did much better.
There isn't this massive mandate for him. It actually was a case that Conservative voters either stayed at home or they went to Reform, right? So the Conservative Party obviously has a lot of soul-searching to do, but I actually agree with Matthew. I think actually 5 years is a long time in this environment, and a lot can happen with very febrile times. A lot can change in that period.
But do they have the quality within those 121 MPs to find a leader and a leadership team,
I think someone like Kelly Badenoch is great. I think she has real talent.
She may have talent. Whether she's the person to lead the Tories out of the doldrums, I'm not sure. It is, you're right, astonishing.
But Matthew, you wouldn't have said that about Sir Keir Starmer 5 years ago. You wouldn't have said, oh, I think he's the one to lead us to this massive majority, would you?
I'm not sure. I don't think that's fair. I'd have to look back at my notes from 5 years ago, and he has done an extraordinary job from a base of 200 MPs to now having 411 or whatever it is. But on your Corbyn point, it is fascinating because it's not just that Starmer's Labour won 3 million fewer votes than Corbyn did in 2017, which is mind-boggling when you think about it. When you think of the attacks on Corbyn, I didn't vote for Corbyn, but the attacks on Corbyn by those in the right-wing media. But also that he won fewer votes than Labour under Corbyn did last time round, and that was the worst defeat in terms of seats that Labour had suffered in 84 years. So you're right to point out to something happening in our demographic. What I would say, and I do think that this is worth mentioning, if you combine the Tory vote and Reform vote, and admittedly I'm sure some people on the right stayed at home, but if you combine those two on the right, in other words, right-wing British politics, they only got 38%.
Yeah, but the key point, though, is staying home. Staying home.
Funny enough, we are talking about this more after the break. But if you want to escape, I'm going to tell you how you can do so, because we've got a great British giveaway, and it's your chance to win the biggest cash prize so far, an incredible £30,000, and it's totally tax-free so far, which means that you'll get the lot to do whatever you like with, and here's all the details you need of how to win it.
Summer could be a scorcher, with your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. It's totally tax-free, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 +1 standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2 or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Oh, good luck indeed. What could you do with that? I'd give you a cracking summer, wouldn't it? I'm Dawn Neeson, and this is GB News Saturday. I hope you're having a lovely weekend, by the way. There is lots more coming up on today's show. Now, Boris Johnson blames Pied Piper Nigel Farage for the role he played in the destruction of the Tories, as he warns the Tories to avoid merging with Reform UK and offers advice on how to fix the Conservative Party. Is he right, though? All of that and much more to come. This is GB News, Britain's news channel, and you've just got time to put the kettle on or grab a beer. Football coming up.
Britain's newsroom. Weekday mornings from 9:30.
So the royal family is opening the doors of Balmoral Castle to the public and giving guided tours today for the first time in more than 170 years.
And one man who spent plenty of time there is former royal butler Grant Harold, who joins us now. Grant, we know the Queen loved Balmoral, and that's, of course, where she was in her final days. Why was it so special?
I think for many reasons, but most importantly, it was a family home, and it's where she spent a lot of time with her family. I mean, we all know the Queen, obviously monarchy was the first thing, but she always said that family was right behind that. And so time with family was important, whether it be at Sandringham or Balmoral, which were both properties that she privately owned. So they're private homes and very special.
Which kind of makes it even more surprising that King Charles has decided to open the doors to the public.
I was surprised when it was announced, because for many years, I've always said that Balmoral's one of the most private homes. You know, they've always been quite fierce about keeping a private home, private estate. You can visit the gardens at certain times of the year. You can see the ballroom as well. But to actually go in the rooms is really a big step for them. And I think it just shows you that the kind of future of the monarchy with properties is opening the doors and letting the public in to see them.
Yeah. Now, you had a very special occasion in that ballroom, because you saw a film in there, but I'm much interested by who you danced with in that ballroom.
In the film that I watched, the documentary, it was the Queen dancing, and I remember thinking I would love to dance with the Queen. And about 12 years later, I was in that ballroom and got to dance with her in that room. So it was quite...
Was she in her full tartan regalia?
She was in a beautiful dress. She had a blue dress on, which similar to what she wore in the documentary that I saw. And they actually replicated the scene in The Crown. Right. I was very disappointed to see that Brad Pitt wasn't playing my sadly.
How fair.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, I hope you've got that nice kettle, that nice cup of tea in front of you, or maybe that cold beer. This is GB News Saturday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online, on digital, and we hope you're having a cracking weekend out there. Now, Boris Johnson blames Pied Piper and Nigel Farage for the role he played in the destruction of the Tories. The former Prime Minister has also warned the Conservatives to avoid merging with Reform, saying, when we get back in, don't be too hasty to get rid of successful election-winning leaders. Wonder who's talking about that. I want to know, is he right, though? Ooh, I can't remember who went first last time. Gentlemen. It was... Right, OK. Let's come to you first. So Darren Grimes and Matthew Stedden are both still with me. Darren, should the Conservatives get in bed with Reform? Would that help both parties?
Do you know, I turn to Boris Johnson as someone who campaigned for him in 2019. I was delighted. I cried when my home seat in County Durham went blue for the very first time in its history. And I say to him right now, how dare you say that, Boris? How dare you say that we have all been led down the garden path by the Pied Piper Nigel Farage, as if we're all sort of demented idiots that don't know our own minds.
Interesting, yeah.
So I would actually say to that, he had this golden opportunity in 2019. The Red Wall said to him, we're going to put our trust in a Tory. We've never done that before. This is your golden opportunity, Sonny Jim, to make the most of it and actually manage to keep on side voters who have turned their faces up, scrunched into a little ball at the idea of voting Conservative for as long as I've been on this planet. Longer than that. So for him to turn around now and blame Nigel Farage when we have been utterly betrayed by that 2019 mandate. They didn't deliver on the net migration promises that they pledged to do so. They didn't stop the boats. There were a whole slew of things in which Brexit gave us the power to be able to change this country for the better, not in this meaningless guff that we hear from Sir Keir Starmer. Actual tools to change the country and make things unrecognisable from what they were within the EU.
Like what?
Like, well, being able to leave the ECHR, for example, being able to actually control net migration from free movement of people, which, of course, we did. But now we've said to everyone, bring your every Tom, Dick and Harry you want over with you whilst you're studying at university and all the rest of it. We've become a clown show. This is the circus. On Thursday night, I presented with Patrick and Michelle Dewberry on this very channel, and we were at the Circus Tavern in Essex. Yeah. I tell you what, Dawn, we're in for one hell of a circus right now, and I blame, in part, Boris Johnson for that, not Nigel Farage.
Strong words, very strong. What do you make of it, Matthew?
I'm relieved that instead of commanding an 80-seat majority, as he did 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago in 2019, Boris Johnson is now confined to wild ranting in the Daily Mail. That's a good thing, I think. Looking at the way that Labour and Starmer can be challenged, I think is fascinating. We started talking about that earlier on, and to my mind, a key, if not the key question, is in what direction does what remains of the Conservative Party go? I don't think Nigel Farage will take it over from inside.
Well, to be fair, Nigel Farage has repeatedly suggested he would not wish to join the Conservatives, saying the party is dead.
And the question is, do they go to the hard right or do they stay in the centre? I think, and I'm not a Conservative and I don't want them to win the next election, I think they would be better placed to be in the centre. I think that's where British elections have been won traditionally. And even though Corbyn won more votes than Starmer's Labour, he suffered a disastrous defeat. Starmer's campaign was actually highly effective. I think in terms of what's happening on the right, you've got to look back to 2015. UKIP in 2015, under the stewardship of Nigel Farage, actually won almost as many votes as they won in this election. They won almost 3.9 million votes. This time they won about 4.1 million votes. So that constituency of people on the harder right in this country have always been here over the past decade.
It's not hard, right?
The question is whether they can grow, whether under Nigel Farage's leadership, now he's an MP, whether it can grow between now and the next election.
You know, I am still confused by what hard right actually means. I mean, there are some that say that the Conservative Party was too centrist. It was too middle of the road. It wasn't...
Then why did Reform only get 4 million votes?
It's not a bad number of votes compared to the other part. I mean,
if you're saying that the Tory party should have been harder to the right, I mean...
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there are lots of people that would say the Conservative Party were too middle of the road, and that is why, Darren...
Well, in 2019 they won an election, and that I assume you would have said that Boris Johnson's Brexit government was hard right.
No, I don't think Boris Johnson ever really knew what he was.
Well, this is just a nonsense.
He was instinctively anti-immigration, was he? I certainly don't think Boris...
evidently not. No.
Absurd things. I think he disgraced public office. I wouldn't describe him as
It's an absurdity. There were former Labour voters, right? My family, all of them, Dawn, former Labour voters. I come from a family where my grandfather was a miner. I grew up around a massive steelworks in Constant. Not a toolmaker. Used tools, but not a toolmaker. And actually, they all voted Reform this time around. I don't think they're all hard right? They're cultural conservatives,
what language
potentially.
can you use for people who are... We're not allowed to use the far right anymore, apparently. What language can we use for people on the right of the Conservative Party?
I think they are culturally conservative, people who are economically sensible, who don't want us to march off and have David Lammy as Foreign Secretary and all these other things that make us look like a clown country. The man is a clown. He is ignorant.
He's a serious
thinker. Please.
He's an effective operator who has been part...
He's an identity politics obsessed moron.
That has now won a comprehensive landslide victory. This targeting of David Lammy is pathetic. Let's wait.
Well, I'll target other people if you want. We're streeting on the government website this morning, Dawn.
Unfortunately, you can target who you want.
Oh, come on, you can't
they, them. It says they, them on his profile.
OK, gentlemen, please. We can come back to this subject after the break, but I'm Dawn Newsom, this is GB News Saturday. I'm running out of time, but there is loads more coming up, including more of this debate. But first, I think it's Ray Addison, not quite as frisky, but, you know, let's find out. Here's the headlines.
Been smacked with a ruler. 2:33, our top stories. Sir Keir Starmer says Rishi Sunak's plans to send migrants to Rwanda is now dead and buried. Speaking after the first meeting of his new cabinet, the Prime Minister ruled out the controversial scheme, which had failed to deport a single one. He also said Labour's election victory has given them a, quote, clear mandate to govern in all four corners of the UK. Well, former Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has ruled himself out of standing for the Tory leadership. When asked, he told GB News that the time has passed. He managed to hold on to his seat of Godalming and Ash and has previously tried twice to become Conservative leader. Police in Tenerife say Jay Slater's family can bring in their own search and rescue teams to look for the missing teenager. The 19-year-old went missing on the 17th of June after setting off on a walk back to his accommodation in Tenerife, a journey which would have taken around 11 hours. Police called off the official search last week, but Jay Slater's mother says they will stay on the island to look for him. The government has announced a new support package for Caribbean countries affected by the destruction of Hurricane Beryl. New Foreign Sec David Lammy has increased funding up to $500k. The money will be used to help those whose homes and livelihoods have been impacted by the Cat 5 hurricane. The Prince of Wales is set to attend England's clash against Switzerland later in the Euros quarter-finals. The Prince, who is also the president of the FA, will be cheering on Gareth Southgate's side in Dusseldorf as they hope to secure a place in the semis. Spain knocked out hosts Germany with a dramatic extra-time winner, while France beat Portugal on penalties last night. Kick-off for England, 5 p.m. OK, those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Ray Addison. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you very much, Ray. And by the way, the voices in my head have just said to Ray, sorry, you can escape now. Quick, make a run for it. Thanks very much, boys. Right, OK, but there is plenty more coming up.
There's a big row going on.
But there wasn't a big...
Get out of the heat.
Come on. Cool your jet shoe. Right, there is plenty more coming up on today's show, possibly even including Matthew Stadlen. But before I tell you what we've got lined up, Nana Okoye has joined me in the studio. Nana, what's coming up on your show today?
Matt Stadlen up to his old tricks again, Dawn.
I know.
He's lucky he's not on with me.
The stuff.
But listen, coming up, now, I don't know if you were listening, but if you're listening really closely in that press conference, you will notice that there was no question from GB News. Keir Starmer, in that particular press conference, his first as Prime Minister, said that he was asked what he would do if he's going to... How was he going to govern people who may not have voted for him or people who voted for him for the first time? Well, our viewers showed incredible support for Keir Starmer, which was quite interesting. Yet we were omitted. So I found that odd and slightly concerning. So we're going to be talking about that. I've got a roundtable discussion. Bill Rammell, Ben Habib will be there, and a few others will be discussing that and other things. Plus, us coming up, I'm asking, is it time for us to reform the electoral system? If you look what happened, the Liberal Democrats got 72 seats on 3.5 million votes, yet Reform got 4 million votes and only a handful. We'll be looking at that, plus Britain's most tattooed woman will be in the studio, and a little spoiler from her. She made her parents cry at age 15 when she tattooed her boyfriend's name on an intimate area of her body. I think she's coming up.
Oh, that sounds a cracking show. And if that lady has got tattoos in places I didn't even want to think about. Nana Requia with a cracking show coming up, so you don't want to miss that. Now, remember, let us know your thoughts on all the stories we're discussing by visiting gbnews.com/yoursay and join the conversation. Or message me on our socials. We're at GB News. Now, there is loads more coming up on today's show. It's absolutely packed. Sir Keir Starmer has reportedly killed off the Rwanda deportation plan on the very first day of his premiership. But is this the right move for a government who claim immigration is their top priority? All of that and much more to come. I'm Dawn Neeson and you're with GB News, Britain's news channel. Don't go too far.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. This weekend is rain for some and showers, occasional sunny spells, but still on the cool side. And we've seen some heavy outbreaks of rain this morning. That's due to this area of low pressure. That's going to be clearing its way eastwards, but driving some northwesterly winds, giving the cool feel. So quite a lot of cloud around through late morning into the afternoon, with outbreaks of rain across the central part of England and into East Anglia. Could be quite heavy at times. Elsewhere, it's a day of sunny spells and scattered showers, but like I said, we've got brisk northwesterly winds, so a cool feeling day out there, especially for parts of Scotland, staying at only around 12 degrees. As we go through Saturday evening, then that band of rain should move out towards the North Sea, but across Scotland, still a focus for some heavy showers. They could be thundery at times too, but notice temperatures here really struggling at around 11 or 12 degrees. Northern Ireland still seeing some showers as we go into this evening, but further across western parts, we should see something a little bit drier tonight and some late evening sunshine with a few showers still around for some of us. And as we go through this evening and overnight, showers continuing across Scotland, northern England, but into central parts of England and East Anglia in the southeast, turning drier. But as we go overnight, we'll start to see a rash of showers coming in towards the southwest and also parts of northwestern England. But temperatures generally around 11 or 9 degrees, cooler, fresher feel across parts of Scotland. So through Sunday morning then, we've got a focus for some showers across southwestern parts of England, but also across northwestern England as well. Could be heavy at times. And then into the afternoon, sunny spells and scattered showers breaking out more widely, turning a bit dry across Scotland with highs here of 15 degrees, 19 in the south.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. Now, Sir Keir Starmer, or just call me Keir as he says these days, says Rishi Sunak's plans to send migrants to Rwanda is now dead and buried. Speaking after the first meeting of his new cabinet, the Prime Minister ruled out the controversial scheme which had failed to deport a single migrant. 2 went voluntarily there, didn't they? Right, OK, and you might have noticed, because they're very loud, aren't they? Still got my panel with me, wake up. Matthew Stadlen and Darren Grimes, thank you very much for hanging around. All right.
You've taken the momentum. We were just getting into the swing of our punches.
I can't actually tell you what we were discussing in the break from pretty light relief. So, Rwanda, right, dead in the water. Matthew, I'm going to come... Keep it crisp and sexy and full of impact, right? Don't go on and on and on. Rwanda, dead in the water.
Awful policy, morally repugnant, completely impractical, wasn't going to solve what is a real problem. None of us want to see these boats coming. Thank goodness it's gone. One of the main reasons that I was delighted that this Tory government is gone.
The problem I have with it, Darren, is Keir Starmer hasn't explained what he's going to do instead.
No.
Okay, all right, smash the gangs.
Border Force Command. Oh, we've not tried that one before.
Well, you have a Border Force Command.
Exactly. So also, I think it's interesting that people like Matthew say, oh, the Rwanda policy, the most awful thing, sort of symptomatic of a really horrible, hard right government and all these other things. Now, Europe are looking at that Rwanda scheme and they're saying, oh, do you know what? That could work. I'm quite liking this. I think I'll copy that. So how is it that we've managed to find ourselves in a position where Europe is now considered, or should be considered, if we judge them by the policies that they quite like the sound of, more hard right than the UK, which is supposed to be this Brexit wasteland?
First of all, I don't know which European countries in particular you're talking about, because Europe isn't just a big lump. But secondly, if you expect me to be some sort of spokesperson for Europe, I'm not. I'm interested first and foremost in what happens in our country, our own decency, our own self-dignity. And we have to put pressure, of course, on this Labour government. We have to scrutinise them. We have to hold them to account. Starmer hasn't made any great promise that he's going to bring these numbers down. What he has said is he's going to smash the gangs. And I hope that he does smash the gangs, because these are very, very bad people exploiting extremely vulnerable people who should not be risking their lives on the channel. Time will tell whether he's going to be successful. But one thing we know, and that is that Rwanda wasn't working. This year was on schedule and may still be on schedule to be the busiest year on record of people coming across the channel to this country.
In 2023, Dawn, there were a big percentage of Indians, people from India, who were coming over on small boats. Now, to me, India is a country that has a space programme. It's not a country that has massively vulnerable populations.
No one supports the boats.
You just said these are vulnerable people coming here. Oh. They're not. They're economic migrants that are coming here, and your party are going to give them amnesty and say you can stay, no questions asked. Come on, come all. Britain's open, and you're welcome. The refugees welcome. Yvette Cooper, she stood there. Well, the Labour Party just said...
One at a time. Sorry, Darren, finish your point.
The Labour Party, Yvette Cooper is now Home Secretary, right? She stood with that refugees welcome lanyard looking like a Cheshire cat with a grin wider than goodness only knows what. And I think, actually, the Labour Party are not serious about this. They don't have a plan on it, Dawn, because they don't want to stop these things. They are not with the British people on this.
You obviously weren't paying attention when Yvette Cooper was Shadow Home Secretary. She takes these things extremely seriously. I don't know the context of which she held up that placard. I remember it. But, of course, a certain number of refugees, none of us in this studio can say exactly how many, but of course some refugees are and should be welcome in our great country, including, by the way, my grandparents who are refugees. And if they let me finish, if they hadn't been welcome to this country, I would not be here. Let's just clear up this myth. People on my side of politics, certainly on the centre-left, certainly our Prime Minister, certainly our Home Secretary, want these boats to stop. Are the people on the boats vulnerable to varying degrees? Some, I'm sure, are economic migrants. Are they vulnerable? Of course they're vulnerable, because they're putting their lives at risk to get to this country. Does that entitle them to come to this country? No. How are we going to stop the boats? Not by Rwanda. That wasn't working and it was immoral. Let's hope and also scrutinise Starmer's attempt to smash the gangs. We'll soon find out in the next year whether he's succeeded to some extent or not. But this is a difficult problem.
All I would say, what's really interesting, Dawn, is that during the time when these migrants thought that the Rwanda scheme was going to happen, they all went to Ireland to try and actually claim refuge there. It was working, it was acting as a deterrent. I think the numbers are going to go up, and Labour don't have a plan on this because they don't want it to stop. They don't want it to stop, Dawn.
OK, well, feisty debate. Gentlemen, thank you very much. I'm Dawn Neeson. I'm stuck in between these two. This is GB News Saturday, and there's loads more coming up on today's show. Now, let's talk football. England must improve if they are to win their first European Championship, and things are starting to get serious in the quarter-final. And the question everyone wants to know is it coming home? All of that and much more to come. I'm not singing, don't worry. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Get a beer, but don't go too far.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
We've been talking about the White House is concerned with playing down concerns about the health of President Biden, who's apparently taken to freezing during public events. Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni was seen herding the president back into a photo with world leaders after he shuffled aimlessly away from the group. In the last few days, videos and images of the president freezing at a fundraising event went viral, but the White House stated that they were deceptively edited cheap fakes. With me now, again, is my panel, the historian and broadcaster Tessa Dunlop and the associate comment editor of The Telegraph, Mujaz Ahmed. Mujaz, I mean, you are a journalist. What about this idea that in some way the images could be fake?
They could be fake, and some of them will be fake, but the reason these AI images or AI videos or weirdly edited videos are a problem for the White House is that people have seen enough of Biden freezing in real life.
It's not going away, this one. It's perception versus reality, but as Mustafa said, it doesn't matter because it's now become Biden's reality, which is bushfighting these questions about his ability connected to his age. I don't understand where you go from here. He's got a vice president who isn't presidential material, who I think polls worse than he does, despite these, you would call them ageist. In many ways, it's about his competence, isn't it?
It can make a big difference when the president whose competence, mental competence, is under question, is running on the matter of competence itself. They're trying to paint Trump as being incompetent, as being not presidential, as being unable to lead, while they have a candidate who struggles to get off the stage. Yeah. That's the issue for them. And it's not really about age. He's not much older than Trump, as you say. It's about the appearance of age.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GB News Saturday with me, Dawn Neeson, on your telly, online and on digital radio. Now, England must improve if they are to win their first European Championship. And things are starting to get serious in the quarter-finals. Having needed extra time to get past Slovakia, remember that? Gareth Southgate has reportedly been working on a new formation to tackle Switzerland. Yes, but the question's on everybody's lips is it coming home? Not the team, the trophy. We don't want the team coming home just yet. Now, we unfortunately can't go live to Germany because we are having issues with the communications over there. So I'm going to have to communicate with my panel. Poor me. Matthew Stadlin and Darren Grimes are still with me, and they are luckily, for the first time today, I have two football fans with me. Darren.
Yes, you do.
Big football fan.
Yeah.
Yep.
We were talking earlier, and I think actually, let's bring Anthony Gordon on. I think he's amazing. I do. Start them. But I actually think this is the one form of leadership that we should have changed a while back, to be honest with you, Dawn. I'm sorry to depress viewers, but, you know, I don't think it's coming home, sadly, but I hope we'd have a good innings tonight, and I'm sure we will. You've got Fabian Schär, though, in the Swiss team, of course, who is, I think, a real defence powerhouse.
Switzerland's very good. I mean, we always say, oh, it's only Switzerland. It's like we're saying, oh, it's only Turkey, but they're actually very good
sides.
Oh,
it's Toblerone. Get over.
Yeah.
We do not have a divine right to win these things. We sort of think we do because the Premier League is very popular around the world.
But it is a good team, though.
We do have very good players.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me make my defence of Gareth Southgate very briefly.
Go on.
I was at the final when we lost on penalties to Italy, spent far too much money, got COVID, watched the chaos as coked-up fans were streaming in. Criminally, it was appalling. We scored the goal, and we then seemed to sit back, and the result then felt like it was inevitable. Why? Because we'd sat back in the semi-final against Croatia of the previous World Cup. And it felt to me like Southgate perhaps hadn't learned that lesson. So I think he has got some limitations. He's certainly not the perfect manager. We are playing boring football at the moment.
Yes.
And I went to the Iceland game just before these championships. I thought we don't have a chance. I thought we had as much chance of winning the Euros as the Tories had of winning the election. And that worried me, obviously, because I desperately want us to win this tournament. But international football is incredibly hard. You look at teams like Slovenia, Slovakia, Serbia, Iceland as well. They are very well organised. Like us, they desperately want to win for their country. They know how to nick a goal.
Yeah.
Slovakia actually have some decent players.
Yeah.
And then they park the bus, and they're very difficult to break down. Plus, when you have a one-off game, a limited but well-organised team, as we know from, for example, the FA Cup, can cause trouble to a superior team, a team with superior talent or superior individuals. Switzerland, as you correctly say, they're not only very well-organised, and they're playing three at the back with wing-backs, but they also have talent. The reason I have some hope today is because it looks like we are switching to three at the back ourselves, and I think most of our problems in the earlier rounds stemmed from our full-backs. Trippier, another Newcastle player, was having to cut inside. It wasn't working. Kyle Walker's delivery, I don't think, is good enough, but he's a brilliant defender. So stick Kyle Walker in a central three at the back, use his pace and his skill as a defender, and then out wide you have Alexander-Arnold, who's a good deliverer of a ball. Don't lose him in midfield. And then at the back you have Saka. So then you play with width and pace, and then you have a chance.
This is the problem, right? If everybody out here can see this, right? Why can't Gareth Southgate?
Well, he is. He's changing to it.
Well.
Apparently, if the press are to be believed, he is changing things tonight. But, I mean, it's a little bit late now, isn't it? And I just feel like the momentum's totally gone. The wind is out of the sails.
No, I think that last-minute goal...
last night, though, that game last night, it started, so with Portugal and France, it started off really boring, and I thought, I'd had it on in the background, preparing for today. And then, all of a sudden, the penalties, it was amazing. That was an incredible bit of telly. And I thought, I'm excited again by the Euros, but I just don't feel that the country is sort of...
No,
I don't know if you get that as well, Dawn.
I have never in my life, as an England fan, seen so few England flags. In fact, during this entire tournament, I have not seen
Well,
one
that'll be because Labour are in power, Dawn. If you fly an England flag, that's it.
By the way, Southgate is the most successful manager, apart from Sir Alf Ramsey, that we've ever had.
OK, fine, right. I've been Dawn News, and this has been GB News Saturday. Hope you enjoy all the football if you're watching it, but don't go anywhere, because there's loads more coming up on GB News as well. Nana Akua next, but let's have the weather first.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. This weekend is sunny spells for some of us, scattered showers around, but still feeling cool. We've got low pressure generally in charge. That's moving its way eastwards, and northwesterly winds giving that cool feel for the time of year. So through this afternoon, any showers gradually easing later on, so turning dry across parts of England in towards the southeast, but showers still continuing across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland before further showers come in from the southwest. Temperatures tonight, though, under the clear spells, 10 or 11 degrees, but feeling fresher across parts of rural Scotland. So to start Sunday morning, there will be some drier and brighter weather around, especially across eastern parts to start the day. But further towards the southwest, we've got a focus for some heavy showers moving in from the south, heavy at times with the odd rumble of thunder, and coming into northwestern parts of England as well. Northern Ireland seeing a few showers as well, just into coastal areas, but across parts of Scotland, a little bit drier with plenty of sunshine, just some rain coming to Orkney and Shetland to start the day. So as we go through Sunday, showers continuing, but actually becoming more widespread as we go through into the afternoon. Heavy at times, containing the odd rumble of thunder too. Across Scotland, dry here with some sunnier spells and lighter winds for many of us as well. So that will help with the temperatures, giving a slightly warmer feel where you do catch any sunshine. And across parts of Scotland, temperatures recovering up around to 15 degrees. Sunday evening then, we'll start to see showers fading away, turning drier with some late evening sunshine. But another area of low pressure is coming in towards the southwest. So as we go into Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday generally unsettled, but temperatures may be recovering just slightly.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Summer could be a scorcher, with your chance to win £30,000 cash, our biggest cash prize to date. It's totally tax-free, which means you get to spend every single penny however you like. What plans would you make with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank account? Take your family on the ultimate holiday, buy that treat that's always seemed out of reach, or just put it in the bank for a later date. However you'd spend it, make sure you don't miss out. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you